Hi, everyone. We do have quorum, but if we just want to wait another minute, I haven't heard that anybody wasn't going to be joining us this evening.
Thanks. Yeah, let's maybe give it another minute because I do think everyone was going to be here. They're slowly popping on there. Here we go. All right. Looks like we have plenty of folks this evening for sure. Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. Kate, would you call the roll?
Yes. Steve Carew, Barb Hart,
Yes.
Andrew Duarte,
Yes. Oh, did that come through my audio? My computer's a little
now I
slow.
can hear you. I saw you, so I knew you were there, but thank
Yes.
you. Ron Mitchell,
Here.
Danielle Kraus,
Here.
Steve Roundtree, Catherine Vallon,
Here.
Scott Papich, Trustee Corvalin.
Here.
Thank you all. I want to double check and see if anybody else has joined. Steve Roundtree, I see, has joined.
Mhm.
Has Steve Carew? Okay. Thank you all.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions or comments on the consent agenda this evening?
So I do have one comment. Steve Carew did bring to my attention that it was the wrong draft of the meeting minutes. So I'm going to put the correct June meeting minutes in our next packet. So I apologize.
All right.
But you still have the financials to be able to vote on.
Great, thank you. With that correction, coming in next month, I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Great, thank you. And Kate, can you call the roll?
Barb Hart,
Yes?
Andrew Duarte,
Yes.
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Catherine Vallon,
Yes.
Scott Papich,
Yes.
Trustee Corvallin.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Great, thank you. And at this time, do we have any public comment on non-agenda items? Hearing and seeing none. Let's go to the first agenda item, which is discussion items. And Kate is going to present the increase in board membership and alternate information.
Good evening, everyone. At our last meeting, it was requested that the board discuss an increase in the membership from 9 members to 11, as well as an alternate position. This would require an amendment to our bylaws. If this is desired by the board, it will come back as an action item in August. A point to consider is that the recent board turnover that we've had, we've gone out more than we usually do. This in 1 year, we had 3 different calls for applicants. So I just want to remind everybody of that. And then our recent NDDA's opinion may limit the applicant pool. So I just wanted to bring those points up into your discussion. And so the questions before the board this evening is, does the board support moving to 11 members? And does the board support an alternate?
Great, thank you, Kate. And do we want to go around the whole circle, or do we want to just, if anyone has questions or comments about this, bring it forward now?
And I will say that Miranda's on here, and she may be able to answer some of the questions a little bit better than me about the process on this. So I just wanted to bring that up as well. I just know that we need to amend our bylaws, but she may be able to get into some of the details if you have some of those questions a bit more.
It's Miranda, and Kate, that's exactly it. Because right now your bylaws do limit you, and so you'd be looking for an amendment, and then you just want to run those by the Board of Trustees. Of course, you can amend your bylaws yourself, but I think it's important that they be aware that you are making those modifications.
Especially given that if there were members added, that they would go to the Board of Trustees for approval as well. So.
Okay, great, thank you. I guess let's just go around real quick and see if there are any questions. I don't have any questions. I feel like it became a lot more clear during the last meeting and even more clear last night at the work session talking to other boards. So I feel like my questions have been answered. How about Steve Carreau? Or is he's not on? No, he is.
Yes, I am here. I logged on about a minute late. Let me get my video going. Yeah, so currently, how many members do we have?
You currently have 9 members, and that includes a position from a member of a liaison for the Board of Trustees.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so I think perhaps the one who, kind of brought this up a meeting or 2 ago, because I thought both Scott and I've forgotten her name, but from the Kaleidoscope, Roz, I think they both were really great candidates. And so I was offering that up because when Rhea and I had joined, we did, we did increase the numbers. So that was, one thing. I feel like we probably don't need more members right now, but I could go either way. And, if we could get a couple more quality members, then that helps our committees. And I think that was part of what the board was talking about at the last meeting. So I'm sort of on the fence. I think we have a really great board right now, and but I'd support increasing it to 11 if we needed to, but I'm not necessarily in favor of it right now.
Great, thanks, Steve. And Andrew.
Yeah, I'm kind of just thinking through, what and I apologize, everyone. I wasn't able to. I had a prior commitment about last evening, but as far as attendance goes, I feel like generally we've had pretty good attendance from folks. I don't know what the exact statistics are.
Over the last year, you guys have been great. The only person that was having trouble with the meeting, she got off the board because she didn't want to slow the progress. So you all have been really good about taking care of yourselves in that over the past year, at least.
Yeah. So, I'm as far as being able to pass things. I think like I'm trying to think statistically. Does it necessarily matter? It just kind of maybe makes a broader, getting some more views and certainly some more bandwidth to handle projects or be on committees. I guess from that standpoint, I could see the benefit of having additional bandwidth, and I can also see maybe some of the detriment to having additional. I guess the additional views can go either way, right? So, I'm not necessarily pushing hard for this, but I'm not opposed to it. That's kind of where I stand right now. And not to be an ambivalent, answer, but that's where I'm at.
Great, thank you, Andrew. And Ron.
Thank you. I'm not particularly in favor of increasing the board simply because it adds time to the meetings. Our meetings are long enough. And since we've had very good participation, I think that the business community is well represented. And I'm not sure why we're considering adding 2 more members, but I'm not in favor of increasing the board.
Great, thank you. And Danielle.
Thank you. I think that the applicants that we were considering were a very good reason to wonder if we wanted to bring more people to the board. I think we did make a good decision. I do feel that Roz would have been wonderful for the beautification committee. I'm fine if we do not extend the membership. I wouldn't argue if we did, but I do agree with the point that having it smaller makes for more efficient meetings, easier quorum to be met, and I think getting to know the new board now as we are would be good before adding more to it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Danielle. And is Steve Roundtree on? Oh, there you
Yeah, I'm
are.
on. Yeah, I don't have any questions or comments on this one.
Great, thank you. And Catherine.
I kind of lean towards liking the idea, just again, was really impressed with our potential board members at our last vote and everything. And, I don't have a lot of investment. I'm not married to the idea, but at the same time too, I kind of like the idea of more representation in the town's businesses. Ron makes a good point. We don't really want the meetings to go any longer. But yeah, it does seem like right now I haven't personally been to any meetings where we ended up having to call it off because we didn't meet quorum. I don't know if that was perhaps a problem in the past. So it doesn't sound like it's an urgent need, but I certainly would not vote against it if it's something that the board sees better participation in the various committees. I believe right now I'm a committee of 1 in my committee. And so, I keep thinking if we had maybe an extra member or 2 that might help the committees, but that's kind of just my guess.
Great, thank you, Catherine. And Scott.
I think Ron makes a good point as far as time management regarding this this team. On the flip side of that, I think if there is a reason that you need more people to do more work or to get more things done, as far as bandwidth goes, that's also to be considered. But generally, I would never want an organization to change their bylaws unless there is a compelling reason that they all agree they need to do it.
Great, thank you, Scott. And Trustee Corvallin.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody's saying. Same thing. I don't want more people because the meetings will go longer. And if there was a need for more bodies to do work and be on committees, then that makes sense. So if that were the reason, then I would be in favor of it, but I'm not personally in favor of too many people. It gets a little confusing, I think, the more people you add to things. But I do agree that if Catherine's on a committee of one and wants somebody to help her, then everybody on these different committees would want more help, then that would be the reason. So adding 2 more people, I mean, it won't be the biggest deal. We'd probably add like maybe another 45 minutes or so, who knows, to a meeting. And could be a good thing, but I just personally joined this group myself, so I don't have a strong opinion one way or another. That's it.
Great, thank you. That's everybody from the board. Do we have any public comment on this one? Hearing and seeing none. Kate, do we need it? It's pretty much sounds like right now everybody's pretty much okay with where we're at, so we don't need to make any kind of motion.
Okay, so I guess I can bring it back next month as an action item, and then we can just do a quick vote since you've had the discussion on it, and it sounds like you all have a kind of a mixed feeling on it. So maybe next month we'll just do a quick vote. I'll bring it back as action, and you can have some time to think about it and that. Does that sound like a plan?
That sounds great. Thank you.
All right, great.
All right, then let's move on to the next discussion item, which is the covered bridge. And is Nikki on, or who's going to be presenting this?
Nikki is sick, unfortunately, so she can't be here. So I got it. I have more information this time, though, so I think I can
Excellent.
do a better job here. Yeah, so Nikki put into the packet an AIM that explains exactly what she's looking for. And long story short, it is support with covering the costs needed to repair the bridge. And I know last time some of the questions you asked me I could not answer. So here are the specifics of what needs to be done. We have the roof that is really falling apart. The one concern, though, is we likely cannot replace it with the tiles that are there, that same product, and we may have to change entirely what that roof is built out of. The flower boxes and structures are pretty dried out and need to be stained and sealed. Generally, there's a feeling that we need to look at just the structure altogether. It was hit pretty hard by the flood in 2013. And then there was a pretty significant flooding that occurred in 2021 that impacted that area as well. We talked a little bit about how, as you kind of drive down there, that driveway a little bit is potholed and needs some repairs. And then there are a series of erosion and washout points on that footbridge. And so those are the areas she's primarily looking for support for. We're really looking at like big scale quotes here. We haven't narrowed it down. We'd love some feedback on if this is something the DDA would be open to funding. We'll get some more solid quotes, but right now they're coming in approximately $8,000. And then potentially, that's just for the roof, and then potentially another $8,000 for the other repairs listed. So that's the ask, is the DDA open to considering funding work on the bridge? And then if so, we'll continue to bring back some more definite figures for you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Miranda. So let's go around the circle and just discuss that real quick. Let's start with Andrew.
Yes, I actually met a roofer out there as well, and looked at. I think given the so I mean, just backing up for a second, I definitely agree with all of the statements in the as far as the condition of the bridge, and the challenge. I think the roof and getting a good reputable company to do it is in order to take that roof off and not drop a bunch of stuff into the river. It kind of needs to be done one piece at a time, which makes it a little bit more labor intensive. So I think that's one of the considerations that I've thought of. And I think asphalt, there's a certain type of asphalt shingle that's a pretty thicker. I talked with Nikki about it and sent her an image, but I guess without getting into the weeds of it, I think it does need work, and it's in the business district, an important part of use. And I personally would support, setting aside, whether that's 16,000 or just a budget of 20,000 to make repairs of the roof, flower boxes, have an engineer assess it, and bless it, and then any paving issues, I think 20,000 would go a long way and get most of those dealt with. So that's all I've got.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And Ron?
I agree with Andrew.
Great, thank you. And Danielle?
Also, I agree with Andrew. I think this is an important part of town, and helping to maintain it is a great thing that we could be doing. I like the number 20,000 to have everything looked at and further assess any structural damage that the floods might have done. I'm definitely up for voting towards this. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Steve Roundtree?
Yeah, thanks for all the description of the stuff, Andrew, on the actual construction piece. I think it's pretty front and center, and in particular, Crosscut just added a back porch, really cool seating, and I think it actually puts this structure front and center. So if it's 20,000 or 25,000, whatever the number is, to make sure that it doesn't cease to be a functional structure, I think that we should support it.
Great, thank you. And Catherine?
Yes, I'm also in favor of this. Don't want to repeat everybody else's words, so I'll just say I'm in favor.
Great, thank you. And Scott?
Well, I think it needs to happen aesthetically. I think it's a safety issue as well. But I have two questions before we forge ahead on it. One is this spending in the budget? And two is, if it's not already in the budget, the operating budget for the year, can some other spend? There's answers to those two questions.
So I lost you on the second part of your question, Scott. So no, this is not approved as part of our budget. This would have to be something that we would take on potentially for next year, which would be part of our next discussion item, is our capital improvement project, which is where this project would fall in line. So I think that answers part of your question, but you kind of chopped up at the end there.
Sorry about that. You did answer my question sufficiently. I'm in support of it.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. And Trustee Corvallin?
Yeah, I agree with everybody else. It's something that has to be done. We're not just going to neglect it. And if town doesn't have it in their budget, then it makes sense it would fall under DDA because it is in downtown district. So I would approve what you guys were thinking, 20,000 or whatever is needed, really.
Great, thank you. And Steve Carell?
Yeah, thanks. I agree with a lot of what people have said, and I do think it's a pretty iconic piece of Nederland, and I like that aspect of it. So we do want it to look good. But I think this is also a great forum to kind of just bring up the idea of what are the parameters that determine what is a DDA responsibility versus a town responsibility, because this is, you know, serious infrastructure of town. People walk across this every day, townsfolk, and I feel like, you know, sometimes we do get a lot more requests for funding things that seem like they might be a town responsibility. And this is in the CBD, and I am in favor of it. But I'm just thinking, you know, I wanted to bring up that point about it. And, you know, Miranda, maybe you could talk to, I don't want to put you on the spot that way, but really, you know, I do feel like it's good to understand why this is a DDA responsibility versus a town infrastructure responsibility.
Yeah, I think that's a great.
And might we want to split? And might we want to split the cost?
Yeah, actually, you know, I think that's a great question. I think similarly here to Scott's point, like obviously we don't have the funding set aside this year to be able to do something like that. It is something the board of trustees could consider prioritizing. And Nikki and I spoke actually about, you know, if that was a desire of the DDA, we would be happy to split this, in which case we would seek you to budget 10,000 and we would budget 10,000. So I don't think that that's an unrealistic ask. I think, you know, oftentimes our budgets are pretty stretched thin and already committed to a series of projects, that when these things come up, we do, I think, naturally turn to the DDA to consider funding. But as I said, I think we're very open to splitting this because it is an infrastructural improvement.
Okay, thanks. And really, my question was a little bit more about, you know, a little more philosophical. Just and we don't have to get into it all on this meeting, but I was just wondering, you know, what are the parameters maybe that would make it more a DDA project or more a town infrastructure project?
I think it's just going to come down to priorities. I think, you know, whenever we go into budget season for the Board of Trustees, these are things that town staff are tasked every year to look at, like what are the big scale items that just don't fall within your regular budget that you want to fund. And so for Nikki, it's probably this bridge. And then we like kind of dump it on the Board of Trustees and we say to them, like, okay, of our giant list here, what's important to you? Obviously, if this became a health and safety issue and that bridge was no longer accessible for people, the Board of Trustees and the town would have to take on responsibility to repair it.
Okay, well, thanks. And I did want to stress that I feel good about working on it. I wasn't sure if it should be a partnership or not. And I do think that it's something like Steve Roundtree had mentioned that we want to neglect, and it is an iconic part of Nederland. So I think one way or another, we should, you know, get it done. But so I'd sort of be in support of either way, whether it's a partnership or if the DDA decides that we'd like to fund it totally.
But can I just add, Steve, to your point? I think, you know, your bigger picture question is, you know, how to answer that. And I was thinking about what metrics one might use to evaluate certain projects. And I think it's kind of just a bit of a dialogue that we have to have where, you know, it's not really historic, but it kind of is. And yes, it's infrastructure, but it's also in the business district. You know, I think just a dialogue, it seems like, and fleshing it out. I don't know. I'm trying to think of how you'd weigh items to determine whether they're, you know, within the DDA's purview or not. But that's my idea to your question, Steve.
Sure.
Thanks.
I guess
Thanks,
I
and
realize you haven't called on Trustee Corvalon yet, but I would be interested in her thoughts because ultimately those are Board of Trustee decisions. It's not necessarily as town, we can offer recommendations to the board of, hey, these infrastructural things need to happen, but they're going to pick and choose what's a priority. So sorry, Tanya, to also put you on the spot, but I would be interested to hear her thoughts.
Well, I mean, I do think it's a town responsibility because it's kind of the bridge. That's a pedestrian bridge, kind of like our sidewalks or something like that. But on the same token, I mean, we all know the budget's limited, and we have to prioritize things. So if the DDA can help with funding these projects, then that leaves more money for other town needs, which are, I'm sure, never ending. But you know, it's like kind of like that Big Springs parking project that the DDA has taken on. I mean, honestly, that really is a public works project that town, you know, could have, or if they wanted to, have found some kind of grant to do it and blah, blah, blah. But the fact is that those things take time. And if we have money that could be spent to do something now that benefits everybody and the businesses in town, and we're for it, I don't see any reason why the DDA wouldn't fund those kind of things. And since the bridge, you know, it's going to have it has the public art, it's going to get enhanced. The flower boxes are part of the beautification, which the DDA is paying for. You could also argue that the flowers and whatnot would come out of town budget, you know, as it would in probably other towns. But there's only so much money, and with this, the DDA has more than the other groups, and so it's a natural that everyone comes to the DDA to ask for money. I would think you get it all the time from other groups, like SAB might come, or, you know, because there are lots of great projects and ideas that just need money, and applying for grants takes too long sometimes. So I'm not really answering your question. I think it falls on both. I think splitting it is a great way to compromise. If it becomes a budget issue when we're making our budget, like if it's going to cut into some other projects that the DDA is passionate about, and then the town could budget 10,000 probably. And you know, looking at, does that take it away from something else, you know, is always the question. So I guess that would have to just come pretty straightforward at the time of doing our budget. If doing this, adding 10,000 is going to take away from other stuff, if it's that serious, then we probably would come for all of it and feel good about it, knowing that, you know, hopefully you guys would do it. But I would think things like this could be half easily, and people would be justified on that. On the board of trustees wouldn't argue, I don't think, at all, to pitch in if the money were there. All right, sorry, that makes sense.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
great.
well, thanks you guys. Yeah, I think it's a good conversation and, you know, just something to try to understand better.
Great, thanks, Steve and Tanya. Miranda, is that something, should we be presenting things in our budget, and Kate can answer this as well, I'm sure, that are cooperative projects like this?
I think that would be helpful for town staff, you know, especially if that's a desire of the DDA, is to split this so that Nikki knows when we head to the board of trustees that we need to be putting aside $10,000.
Great, thank you. Since this is a discussion item this evening, if there is no further board comment, is there any public comment?
Barbara, if I could I just wanted to say something else, just, you know, for the record, really, is that, you know, we all do support this. It was just more, it was a great opportunity to bring up that discussion.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Great,
Thanks.
thank you.
Hi, everyone. And since we'll be having our discussion about capital improvement projects during this meeting, after the next item, we can kind of carry this over to that time.
Great, thank you. So hearing and seeing no public comment, and since it was just a discussion item, let's move into the next item, which is the performance space supplemental budget request. And is this Andrew or Trustee Corvallin?
Oh, Andrew,
start.
would you do
Sure.
it? Because I think you would be more eloquent.
Sure. So we had a performance-based meeting, Tanya and myself and Jesse Ansari and Chris Perret down there. And there's, you know, certainly been a lot of ideas and concepts and renderings all in that area that is just north of the wastewater treatment plant. And in looking at it and looking at the floodplain maps, the floodplain covers about 2/3 of that area of the proposed performance space. And so there's a few issues that kind of need to be understood in my opinion, I think before even soliciting proposals for design or discussing design. So the reason that the wording in the funding request is to understand the limits and restrictions about performance-based construction in the floodplain is that it may be that because a lot of the concepts involve bringing grade up, raising grade close to the reservoir, which is in the floodplain, and that can't really be done without a net. You have to, for every, if you raise grade 5 feet over a 5 foot wide area, you have to drop grade so that it nets out to really no change. And that's really would be a big factor on any, design that moving forward, as well as what the elevations are to try to figure out, okay, is this space going to be completely flat, or is the stage going to be elevated slightly, or is the stage going to be, sunk slightly? And, all of that's kind of fluid, and the real big constraints and drivers are going to be the floodplain and floodplain construction. And I think also to a certain extent, the dialogue and interface with the city of Boulder about, they've got a culvert, which, we don't think necessarily that issue can't be resolved, but there's a blocked culvert that has been, causing that performance space area to block up and continue to have water in it. But that brings up the point that any drain, all the drainage work that this area that needs to happen in the performance space, there's a lot of civil engineering involved. And to begin getting any firm going with that, we think that what would be best would be for us to retain JVA to create an updated and current survey of the parcel with a topo, and have them do a rough concept of like the area where the performance space would go, be that the stage and the standing / seating area, and throw the bathroom group on there so that they could say, okay, here's your current survey with the current elevations for what grade is like now, because we don't have any current data, and the grade has moved around in that area a bit with various projects, either taking fill out or bringing fill back in. And if and when the design is proposed to the town / Boulder County / City of Boulder interface, whatever, all the jurisdictions that are going to be able to weigh in on that, FEMA, we kind of need to have our ducks in a row. And what we don't want to do is send a firm off on a, with our ideas, that then to come back and find that, oh, lo and behold, can't really do X, Y, Z in the area because the floodplain's here. So I think really what this goal would be is to, again, understand the limits and restrictions of what can happen, so we are a little bit more educated when even beginning to discuss starting the design, if that makes sense. So this isn't really a design. This is really having a better understanding of the building envelope, or the area, and what the limits and restrictions are that we can and can't do within that area. And just as far as cost goes, I did speak with Nathan of JVA, and I said, I gave him kind of the rundown of where we were at, what the challenges that we were thinking about of, how is the floodplain going to impact things? What is the area that's actually in the floodplain? Is it 2/3? Is it 70%? Is it 50%? And so, he recommended that a topo would be, certainly in order, and a concept plan that they could do flood mapping for. And then we also talked about a survey. So at first it was, just 5,000 for the topo and the kind of the concept on a plan with the floodplain and the restrictions. And then, in thinking about, well, no matter what, we're going to need a current survey because of City of Boulder land interface right there. So that was where it went from 5,000 to 8,000, with that 3,000 being for really a detailed survey. So that's, I think, it in a nutshell. If anyone's, I'm sure people have questions, but that's what I've got.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And let's go around and see what kind of questions there might be so far. And let's start this time with Ron.
As usual, I agree with Andrew. You need to know a lot more about the topography before you endeavor to design something. So having JVA delineate where we could actually have permanent structures and things that are conducive to having a performance space are really a prerequisite. So I think that route is a very good one.
Great, thank you. And Danielle.
Thank you, Andrew, for having all of this information. I do think that it makes perfect sense to have that set in place before moving forward. That way, any work that we put into it is safe and secure. I think this would be great to do.
Great, thank you. And Steve Roundtree.
Again, thank you, Andrew. Great information. I do think that this space is really crucial to be able to also leverage, Gercio's been cleaned up and is a much better, last weekend there was an event down there. There was music, there was a whole event that had a dirt lot next to it that was kind of pushed up to deal with flooding that had occurred in the days leading up to the event. It feels like to really be able to leverage that entire space, something needs to be done over there to, at a minimum, get it from being a kind of a water catch basin. So I think whatever the funding needed to be able to look at this and move forward and figure out what the best use for that space is, and to keep it from actually impeding the functionality of the space next to it would be wonderful.
Great, thank you. And Catherine.
I also agree that, getting, just for the record, I don't know who JVA is. Everybody keeps referring to them, but I guess they started being a part of projects before my time. But other than that, I fully agree. Having had to deal with FEMA just on other fronts and stuff like that, because of being near a flood zone, that can become a whole full-time job by itself. And so walking into this, knowing in the beginning where would be the best placement of any structures, where it's going to end up coming back to create, longer term effects and longer term expenses. It just only makes sense to get all the information up front and make decisions smart the first time through instead of trying to fix bad decisions.
Great, thank you. And Scott.
Well, being the newest member of this, I have some catching up to do, and I hope you'll forgive me for asking some of these fundamental questions. I guess the assumption I'm making is that the exact space where this performance space is intended to go has been determined to be absolutely the best place to put it. It sounds like we've come to that conclusion. Correct me if I'm wrong. But if that is the case, then there's no question that we have to do more diligence around this before we move forward on it, especially with it being, 50 to 60 or more percent overlapping with mapped floodplain. If there are any preliminary drawings or sketches of where this is intended to be, I would love to see that at some point in time, though. And also, Andrew, thanks for doing all this hard preliminary work on this.
I have a drawing, or kind of some of the the concept drawings. I don't know if it's time to share them now, or I can email them to you, Scott, so you can see if you message me or if I get your email. I don't think I have your email, but I'm happy to email you all the various iterations of it and kind of the most current.
Andrew, you could send it to me and I can send it out to everyone.
Okay, all right.
That'd be
We'll do
great.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Trustee Corvallin.
Yeah, so, when we've been going down there, we've been just kind of meeting at the site because it seems to make more sense. I mean, you can't visualize much right now. It's pretty much a mess. And it's really important right now that we couldn't even get a drawing of an architect to come in and do anything right now because we don't really know like exactly where the flood is or the topography, everything he said, like what's Boulder counties, are they going to have any issues? There's all these concerns. And this would be a good step one before anything else can happen. And then from there, once we have all that down, then we could start getting with more creative actual designs for what it would be like, this for the step two, which would be getting the stage and landscaping done. But we need to know all this information first. So if we don't do this, we really can't get started at all. So that's if we want to get started and do anything. And as far as best location, I mean, they put the electricity box there, thinking like this was a few years ago that this was going to be the best location of all town-owned property. And it probably is because it is pretty central and it is large enough versus, I really don't know where else we would put it. So that is, if we want to do a performance space, then this is the first thing we have to figure out. And JVA, for the record, to Catherine, is the engineering group that town uses a lot, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Their town's engineer,
Yeah.
town's civil engineering.
Yeah,
firm.
so I mean, like we could in the future for the actual performance-based design, put it out to bid to other companies to get different perspectives. But for really simple things like this, it's just better to go with somebody who knows town.
That's exactly right, Trustee Corvallin. I wanted to second that JVA kind of does that for it, and they worked for us on Big Springs, and that, my recommendation would be when we got to that point that we would want to go out to bid and see the different things that people would come up with. So thanks for hitting on all of that.
Thank you. And Steve Carreau.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew, for that synopsis too. That was very helpful. I had a few questions, maybe for you, Andrew, but I was wondering if you had spoken with Nathan or anybody at JVA about the survey aspect of it. If we did decide to do a actual survey there, could we use someone like Lee Stadell, who's a local, or if there are other local companies for that?
I don't think JVA would. I mean, I know we kind of did that with Big Springs. And yeah, I guess there's no harm in asking. I don't think. I know the relationship between, JVA and Lee can be a bit contentious sometimes, but no, I think they can work together, and there can be, Lee can do it. He might, because of like the elevations. I mean, I know Lee's fantastic, and I also know he's very busy. So again, not that this is even approved or would be happening, tomorrow or next week, but it may be just a bandwidth thing where the with JVA needing to do kind of some of the graphic, the design of overlaying a performance space. I emailed Kate. She's going to be sending out, but there's a lot of different site plans and concepts. And this amphitheater. So I guess not to get off track, but Steve, to answer your question, we could certainly ask Lee if he's willing to do that, and ask JVA as well. I think from a just paying one person and organizing one person, it'd be easier to just deal with JVA. And I think, you know, because it's a pretty simple survey and topo with, you know, not a whole lot going on, that shouldn't be, you know, too difficult. But that's, you know, my thoughts there, I guess, if that answered that. But just yeah, and then seeing these, Jesse Ansari shared with me this what's called the Frischetti amphitheater plan, and you know, this kind of has, I think, what is the most current, just if people want to know what it looks like and talking about it, the most current concept of, you know, the space and the design. With this doesn't necessarily show the bathrooms location, the bathrooms on it, but it has the stage, it has a road into the stage. I don't know if I could share my screen, or if we don't want, we want to move on. I'm fine to do whatever, but
What's it called? Forschetti?
Frischetti, it's the email, it's the amphitheater plan, Frischetti, June 2013.
Okay.
If you want to share your screen, Andrew, feel free to.
Okay, let me do that real quick. So this one. Can you guys see paperwork now, me scrolling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, currently over here is the septic wastewater treatment plant, I should say. And basically this corner, you know, this trapezoid is the area where the performance space is proposed. This property line is the city of Boulder. Beyond this, Barker Reservoir. And you know, what's being talked about, and is, I suspect we're probably going to find out, is that, you know, this area in the past has been talked about being raised, but this is really what the floodplain kind of overlayment is, pretty much this 2/3 from, you know, what is the real main area to the east. So I don't necessarily think we're going to be able to build anything up. I think this is pretty much going to need to stay flat what it is. And then again, if this road or these berms are in the floodplain, you know, that's where we're getting into, I guess, the purpose of this is to really understand, like, okay, you know, where is the line, and give, you know, a potential design team, hey, here's the line of the floodplain, here's the survey, and design, you know, anything to the east of this, you know, to the south of the page, has to pretty much be flat or net out 0 in the floodplain. Let's just see if there's any other interesting drawings here, but no, that's just the power panel. So really, this all kind of being flat, and anything that's constructed, you know, about halfway from the lot to the east, really is going to need to totally comply with FEMA. And, you know, again, that's why we still don't know whether, is it halfway, is the floodplain really closer to the stage, or is it further away? You know, does the floodplain only come to, you know, the 1/3 of the lot? We just don't know yet. So this info will help us there. So I can stop sharing. Does anyone have any questions or want to see any zooms or different pictures? You good there?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it's pretty good, Andrew. Thanks. I just
Okay.
had
Yeah.
a couple other quick questions, unless anyone had questions right on that stuff that you were presenting.
I have a quick question, I think. Is this something that the park board as well would be involved with because of Gercio? And I mean, they're making decisions based on what's going on in Gercio, correct?
ProSeb? Are you talking
Yeah.
about ProSeb?
Yeah.
They would be,
They
they
would.
would be involved once we get.
And I mean, this abuts right up to that, correct?
Yeah, like Jessie Anasari was at our meeting and she would probably be the liaison unless somebody else wanted to be. But
Okay. I just, after that meeting last night, it feels like that cross-committee communication would be crucial. And if they were planning to do something different in Curcio, it would be unfortunate to like plow forward with a plan. It feels like something needs to happen, but it should happen so that we end up with the best end result.
Yeah, like Curcio is not going to have a stage, and it could be a home for a farmer's market or some other smaller events, but the idea would be to create a space for larger events. And so, and that way, like it wouldn't destroy like the landscaping of Curcio Field by having all those people and whatnot. So just want to create something that people can drive to the stage to unload equipment, and have like larger bands playing.
And then just a quick follow-up question to that, and it's hard to tell. Thank you for sharing the picture, Andrew. Is that all? So is the stage factoring in that the gas facility remains there, and that the stage would be butted up against the back of that, or?
Yeah, I mean, the stage isn't quite butted up. Right now, what's being proposed for the stage is really just a flat paved area where a truck could pull up and load out, equipment. Part of the proposed design development, we've discussed, okay, would a future covered stage, when pouring the concrete, maybe potentially there'd be a phased plan where there'd be structural piers in the ground that a stage covering could be put up in the future. But I think for just doing the beginning civil work, the grading and drainage, and pavement to the stage area and potentially bathrooms, that seems to be a lot to get started. But I think certainly a future covered stage of some sort would be factored into the structural design of the concrete of the stage. But again, like what and where that stage is and how it interfaces with the bathrooms and where potential fences would be, or entry or exit points, all that's totally, needs to be fleshed out and designed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then Andrew, my other questions were pretty much covered in this discussion, so I'm good. And I just want to say I do agree with the others that, this is a necessary first step. If you want to build something, you got to figure out what the lay of the land is before you start deciding on how to design it and build it. So I'm in favor of, whatever it takes to get this done.
Great, thanks, Steve. Do we have any other board comment or any public comment on this item? Hearing and seeing none, since it's a discussion item, Kate, we bring this back next month?
Yes, or you can discuss it as part of your budget discussion next. So I know that Andrew and Trustee Corvlin thought, the sooner we get started, the better. So that's why there was a request for the supplemental. But you all may choose to just make it part of next year's budget, given the timing. But that can be kind of part of the CIP discussion next. And if you all do decide that you want to move forward with funding this year, then yes, I'll bring it back in August for action so that I can take it to the Board of Trustees to see if they will approve some supplemental funding to get that started.
Okay, great, thank you. I think, yeah, let's talk about it in our budget priorities next, and then if we need to bring it back as an action item next month, we would want to have a lot more information for the Board of Trustees anyways. So now we have a little bit of information, but maybe we can come up with more and more of an aim that really kind of includes everything they're going to ask us. And since Tanya's helping with that as well, then she will know some of the things they're going to ask us so that we are well prepared for the next meeting. Great. Do we want to move on to the budget priorities, or do we want to take a 5-minute break? Anybody have a preference?
have to run to the bathroom really quick, but
I was gonna
that's-
say, this
that's-
was
Yeah,
probably
let's do
a
a
good
5-minute
time.
break. Let's do a
Yeah.
5-minute break, then we can refill our waters and everything. Thank
Okay.
you.
Hey, Scott, I don't know if you could hear me. I was wondering if you're in an RV.
I am. How could you tell?
It looks nice. Are you traveling right now?
I am. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I love seeing people being mobile these days.
Well, here you go. It's a
Yeah,
little messy. Here's the back end.
nice.
Here's the kitchen.
All right.
The where I'm sitting right now is a combination dining room desk.
All right. It looks nice.
Nice of you to notice.
Right. It's hard to tell if everybody's back on, but I think that most of us are here. So let's go back in and begin the budget priorities discussion. And Kate, are you there?
I am.
Yay.
All right. So, given our schedule, feedback is sought tonight on the projects that we want to pursue as well as a budget amount. All projects except for wayfinding are scheduled to wrap up in 2022. So, where there's not anything that we need to talk about for carryover at this time for any of our projects, which is really exciting. And a decision on the next phase of wayfinding will be needed to make, we'll need to make before we submit our budget. But just as a reminder, we're not submitting our budget to town until after our August meeting. So this is the last time it'll be a discussion. Next month, it'll be an action item, and we'll go through all of our admin costs, which are fairly stagnant, given that we just work with the mill levy. So that's why we're focusing on this tonight, because this is really where more of the discussion is. And next month, when it comes back, this part of the budget will come back, as well as the administrative portion of the budget for you all to vote on, to move forward to the Board of Trustees for inclusion with their budget. And I think I just went through all that at the August meeting. Okay, so I think probably the easiest way to do this is for me to share my screen. You'll see in your packet, I've highlighted the items the projects that we're most likely talking about, and then we can add others onto there. And I did miss highlighting the Ned Fire Protection District, but I have it on the spreadsheet that I'm going to share with you here. All right, bear with me. It's been a long time since I've shared my screen, and so let's see. Okay. Sorry, it's making me get all approvals to let me share my screen here. Sorry about this, everyone. Okay, so it won't let me do what I need to do without making me X out. So I apologize. Macy or Miranda, is there any way that you would mind sharing the packet?
Yeah, I'll have to just download it. Give me 1 second.
I'm sorry.
No worries. It'll just take me a minute.
So that at least it can be up and I can walk us through it that way. I guess while we're waiting a second, I can get started. We'll talk about beautification. Rhea had some parting comments on things, and I wanted to give you an update on how things have been going as well. So we have been historically doing $25,000, and this year we switched things up and actually hired a gardener, and it has been going wonderfully from my perspective, and I hope you all have seen the hard work she's putting into town, doing weeding as well as taking care of all the plants and that. And she's part of our reason in hiring her is that she's very interested in owning this, and next year helping us do the ordering as well as the planning that Rhea had done for us. And Rhea is also very willing to help us through the future. She's always made that known. But that was one of the things we really liked about Judy Evans, who's our gardener, was that she really wants to own this program and do this for the DDA. And she's been doing it as a salaried employee this year. And, you know, the last month has worked out really well. But that was a big change in how we did the budget for that. That was what really made us hit that $25,000 line, is by budgeting for a full-time salaried employee, as well as spending a little bit more on flowers to get the bang that we were hoping for, as people come into town, like Blackhawks and Central Hip City and that. Trying to think. The other thing that Ray wanted to bring up, there has been some talk about it bringing flowers back to the shopping center, and that gets more into once you all approve a budget, you know, where the line items go. But her only comment on that is that it's more about making sure that there's a good plan for watering, that if there's going to be all those individual pots in the future, she thinks that there has to be buy-in from the business owners to water those. But if we were to water them, that we would do more bigger central planters, not as individual. But I just wanted to bring that up because I know that a few people have talked about that. So I wanted to address that because Rhea had given, you know, her 2 cents on that. So I guess what I would propose is to keep beautification at that same level, if everyone is liking what they're seeing. But I'm also open to whatever, of course, the board wants. But I just wanted to kind of give you that feedback and report on how it was going with hiring an individual, since that was a different path that we went this year. So if anybody has questions on that, I'm happy to answer those as well.
Hey, this is Rita. I do have a question. You mentioned that it's a salaried position. Are you saying the DDA is you paying?
Yes. Yes. She's in Gusto and she has a separate budget.
Is?
Yes. She just got in there in the last month because she just started getting paid. So you could, if you log in there, you can see that she's in there now, and you could pull any reports. But yes, she's had 2 pay periods now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Because I'm trying to understand, you know, the line item we have for you, and this is under the admin piece for salaries.
Yeah, this is totally attributed to the beautification budget. This is all wrapped up. We have it wrapped up in this $25,000 is where her salary and benefits come from. Or not benefits. I'm sorry. There's no benefits. I'm so used to saying salary and benefits. Just salary.
Right. Salary. So employer taxes, all that stuff.
Yes.
You have enough money. Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
It's all wrapped up in beautification.
Okay.
And you'll see in my reconciliation for June how I split out those costs. And I actually have a question about if I did it right. So that's a follow-up for you and me.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Kate. I don't have any questions. I think the flowers look absolutely amazing. And I would like to see additional money in the budget so that there are flowers at the shopping center and other locations in town. So I would like to see the budget go up for beautification for next year.
I would second that and also say that budget should go up a little bit, maybe a couple $1,000s, just due to inflation. We're going to get the same thing at a higher cost next year.
Yeah.
A report came out today that inflation is a 41-year high of 9%. So we have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, and I would also say, just again, to talk about, you know, when we're getting into the line items, Judy also has ideas about ways to save money with water and that too. And so there's different ways that things could be tweaked. And we also had a larger line item for weeds than we probably needed. You know, there's some different things that could be tweaked within there to get shopping center, you know, so, but you can of course up the budget if you want. I just want to call out, you know, some of the places where there may be some cost savings that could still provide all the things you want. But we were just learning some lessons this year with this budget and going about it in this new way. But certainly if you want to add money, for sure. But there's different ways that we are also thinking that things might change for next year a little bit too.
Great, thank you. Do we want to go around? Do we want to pick it apart piece by piece this time, Kate? Is that the goal?
So that's what maybe what we do is we go through and we talk about each thing, and then you guys will come, and then we'll come circle back through and we'll talk about the amount of money you want to assign to each project. Because I think that's the way we did it last year. Does that sound good to you, Barb? So I'll
That
just
sounds
move.
great. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's go around. Sorry, I have barking dogs. Let's go around the circle and see if there are additional comments. Andrew, do you have any comments or questions?
No comments, or I should say, no comments or questions right now. I'm just kind of taking it in here. What the highlighted in yellow? What does that yellow mean, Kate?
So because this covers a couple of years, so that
Mhm.
you have the history, I'm
Mhm.
calling your attention to the projects that are actually ones that you're going to want to discuss. I didn't add things like performance space or that, I will, but this is just from our budgets previously where things have lied, and I just wanted to make it easier for your eye, so I pulled out the highlighted, and that's where I said I had mistakenly not highlighted the Ned fire protection IGA, but
Okay, got it. All right.
but
Yeah.
that I have that, and we'll discuss that after wayfinding.
Okay. So the budget then for 2022, for example, Big Springs parking, the budget for 2022 is 358, but the budget for 2021 is 187. And are those like two separate amounts? Because I thought
Yes,
that
those are old.
seems
So yes, those are old. Those are what were budgeted previously.
right,
So
but that's not necessarily what we spent, correct?
no, that's
In
not where you spent
2021.
yet. No.
Yeah. Okay. All right. No, I don't. Yeah, I guess for me, making trying to understand or what to appropriate more for, and maybe this information is, is out there. If I would have looked more closely at the packet, but like how much are we into, let's say, are we projected this year for 2021, for example, to be, what's our percentage into wayfinding? What's our percentage?
So that's what I was saying earlier, that you're not going to have any carryover. Wayfinding is the only thing that could potentially have carryover, but that's where I called out in the aim that we need to talk about wayfinding and what those next steps are, because that'll affect how much money is left over for wayfinding for this year and how much could be for next year. But Big Springs, we started paying for that, but that is going to be zeroed out this year because we know construction is going to start in 2 weeks. I have some numbers on the special event planning, but I was going to bring those up as we talked about it. So
Okay.
if that is more helpful, so that we can
Yeah.
discuss it as we're going. But
Yeah,
yes,
I
I
guess
have
so.
all
If
that.
we're just talking about beautification, then
Beautification, we are about 50% spent on there, which is great. That's where we would want to be. So now the rest is really just Judy's time and her energy and water.
got it. Okay. No, I don't have any other questions right now. Thank you so much for explaining that.
No problem.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. And Danielle.
I don't think I have any questions or comments at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. And Steve Roundtree.
Yeah, no additional questions or comments at this time.
Great. Thank you. And Catherine.
Same thing, no questions or comments.
Great. Thank you. And Scott.
Well, I think any questions I have are similar to Andrew's. So as we go through each one of these items, and maybe this is just help that the new guy needs, but it would be great if we could be very specific about what items are ongoing that will be continuous year after year. I know some of them will not be, but I know some of them will be. So if we could make that specification. And then the other thing is to discuss a little bit more about how much we've actually spent so far for each one of these line items, especially versus the budget. Does that make sense?
Yep, and that's exactly that's what I'm going to do here. So for beautification, just to make sure everybody understands, we're 50% spent on beautification, which is where we want to be. The remainder is for salary and for water. And we've got all the plantings in, we've paid for all of those. And like I said, I'll go through each item and let you know where we are with the spending. But this is a program that there's nothing other than wayfinding, there's nothing that is a regular program. You could choose at any time to continue or discontinue any of these, if that's helpful, Scott. So beautification is something that has been historically done and historically funded at $25,000 a year. Historically, it has not spent the way that it has in the past year. That's why this year they decided, the beautification committee decided to fully utilize the funds that were budgeted and see what we could do. And this was the plan that they came up with. Is that, I'm hoping this is giving you some background that's helpful, and just for anybody and everybody's edification too. So, so that's where we are with beautification. Do you have any more questions about beautification?
Okay, great. Trustee Corvallin.
Yeah, I think we should spend the money on beautification. I would love to see maybe some additional for some. I know the traffic circle is CDOT, so that's why it's hard for you guys to help that look. But I get so many complaints about it. Myself is one of the biggest complainers. It's so horrible. And I think some hardscaping would be really helpful. That then you could put some perennials in there that are hardy. They could get pretty big, like catnip or something like that, and keep it simple. But I think if beautification could figure out a way to find a little more funding to make that traffic circle more attractive, it would really help. I think that's my thoughts.
Great, thank you. And Steve Carell.
Yes, thanks. So for beautification, I just want to maybe update that, since 2018, I believe our beautification budget was really down around 10 or 12 or maybe 15,000. And then it went up to about 18,000 and then the 23 and 25. So it hasn't always been at 25 or 23, and we have improved beautification a lot since I've been on the board. But just it's not a static thing, it has been increasing. And I agree with Trustee Corvallin that the traffic circle would be awesome if we can do something better with that. And I know from our board history that CDOT, does complicate things there. But I really feel like that's something that everybody in town, visitors and locals alike see as we come through town. And it would be great, maybe even if we could just do some big perennials that are bushy and, have a better look to it. And then the only other thing is, I think if things are working well with the budget this year, as it sounds like it is, and, Ron talking about inflation, I think we should look to increase it a bit for next year regardless. So I guess those are all my comments on beautification.
Great, thank you, Steve.
Sure.
I believe that's everybody on the board. Do we want to open up for public comment on each item, or how do we want to do that?
Maybe we just wait for public comment on the end.
On the end, okay.
So that then they could just go through everything.
Okay.
They would have.
Go
ahead. Sorry. So I'm going to skip wayfinding for right now because I think that that's going to be a little bit different. So let's go through some other items on here. Miranda, would you mind scrolling down just a little bit? All right, perfect. Perfect. So Ned Fire Protection District, IGA, is the next one. And this, just for everybody's edification, is the IGA that we have with the Fire Protection District that we pay annually, that we have come up with a formula that is in the IGA that is determined. Last year, it did go up slightly, so the $30,000 still covered it. And I would suggest, based on what we've seen this year, that $30,000 would probably cover it again. So if it did slightly, the percentage of increase is so small that we're talking like $1,000 or so a year. So I think 30,000 at least gives us the wiggle room and makes sure that whatever that calculation comes to, and we can't do that until December. So I don't have a way to predict that right now, but that I think 30 kind of keeps us still in the safe zone so that we have enough money to cover whatever that exact calculation is. And as a reminder, it comes to you in January or February from the Fire Protection District for that check. So that's, and they actually, I have asked them to send us the invoice for that, and we haven't yet paid them out for this year yet, but they are aware, and we're totally ready to pay them when they're ready to give us the invoice. So I guess we can go around about the IGA now with any questions.
I have no questions and comments about that. That was explained to us very in depth from Rick last year. So does anyone have questions or comments about that specific line item?
I have no comment.
Well, do we want to move to event support, or do we want to go around? I didn't know how you wanted to do it, Barb.
I think just keep going. And
Okay.
I think if anybody has a question or comment, they can certainly speak up, but it'll save us time not
Yes.
to go round and round and round.
Yeah, no, please, and jump in, whenever. That's absolutely fine by me. Okay, so event support. This is just for the grants, and so far this year we have spent $5,500 of the $10,000. So that's where we are. And I have heard that there is one other event that is coming to us for funding, but that's the only one that I know of that's coming, that I've heard about, that's planning on coming to us for the rest of the year. Now that doesn't mean other people won't come, but I just wanted to, let you all know that. So the budget was 10,000, as you heard, and so that's where we are for this year with it.
And is that the Ned again?
No, it's not Ned. It is an event that Stephanie Andelman is working on, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's a newer thing that she was working on, and I think she had hoped to get it to us for this month, but she wasn't able to. So it will probably be an application that you see at your August meeting.
And that's for the Jazz Wine Festival.
Yes, Jazz Wine, that's what it is.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question about event support. What exactly is that? I mean, I know it's what it sounds, but so any promoter or group in town that's
Marketing,
having
yeah.
an event can come to you to ask for financial help?
Exactly. We have an application that we provide individuals with, and it's this specifically is for event support. So a lot of times it's marketing and things like that, things that benefit the district, is kind of how the applications are considered. What is going to bring in more people to the businesses is kind of the lens that the board reviews those in, and gives funding at that. And it's typically about $1,000 a project or a event is typically what's happened. Frozen Dead Guys Days, due to the size of it and due to the timing of the year that it brings individuals into town, they got a little bit more this year. But that's, just kind of at the board's discretion.
Okay, that's good to know.
And I'll
Thanks.
give you a note on traffic control when we get to that too, because they kind of go hand in hand.
Okay.
Great, thank you. If there are no questions or comments, let's keep going.
All right, well, since we've started with event support, let's talk about traffic and safety support, which is down a little bit lower, and you had budgeted 20,000 this year, and currently you've spent 11,500 of that 20,000. And Trustee Corvalin and Scott, and I think Catherine as well, we started this pot of money last year as a way to help offset some of the costs for traffic and safety component of big festivals, to help with parking, help have flaggers. That's kind of the intent of this pot of money. So typically when applicants come to the board, they're coming for both pots of money to help their event. And the traffic and safety support, it's not like the event support program, which has been around a little bit longer, that has, seen about $1,000 in applications. Since this is newer, it has ranged in what we have provided. So like Ned Gravel, they got $1,000. I believe we gave $350 to Frozen Dead Guys Days, but so it just kind of varies into what the different people ask for, honestly, sometimes. So I hope that's some helpful background on traffic and safety and how event support and traffic and safety kind of work together.
Great, thanks, Kate. I don't have any questions on that one.
Sorry, this is Tanya. Is that also an application similar to
Yes.
the event support?
Yes. Yes.
And Kate, can you send
Yep.
those applications to the new board members so they can kind of see? Because it is lined out a little bit how those work in the
Exactly. There's a lot more detail into it. I'm just being, giving the broad overview, but yes, I'll send those out to everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Barbara, if I just wanted to ask, as far as a discussion item, are people thinking that, these numbers should be good for the next year's budget, what current numbers are, or are we getting into that with
So yes, my
each
hope
of
was
these
after
items?
we went and just kind of went through this information, that then I would go back through with everyone and have you assign, talk about what you think might be a good budget number. And again, this is
Okay.
just your discussion. So next month you could come back and change it if you wanted to when we re-go over it.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so I'll go on to public art project. And this year we had originally budgeted 10,000, but we went over due to some opportunities that arose from the year. And so we increased the budget to 14,110. And I don't have the exact number for public art, but I would say we're at least 50% into the budget, given that we have paid for a few things. We've paid the initial deposits for both of the artists. So that totaled about a little over, that was about $5,200 that we spent in that area. And then there's been some miscellaneous costs and some other things that we've paid, but that's where we are. We're on track with spending for public art, and that should be spent down by the end of the summer as those complete. And that's been very exciting to see those come to fruition. I hope you've seen them get started on the Rock Shop this week. And I don't know how much history is needed on this, but I'll give as best as I can. There was a master plan that was done with, I believe that was the $5,000 that was done in 2020. And in 2021 was the first year that we went out and did the mural, which is the animal mural at the feed store. And so this year, this 2021 was the second year of the program. So I'm sorry, it was done in 2019. 2020 was the first mural. 2021 are these two murals that we're now bringing up. So for 2022, it's whatever budget that you decide on, and I'm sure the Public Art Committee will come up with something fabulous like they have the last 2 years.
Great, thank you.
So that really kind of gets to the projects that we have funded previously that you may want to continue to fund. I put under here the performance space and the Riverwalk because those are conversations that have been percolating. So I wanted to bring those into the conversation. But then we can also go back to wayfinding as well. So with wayfinding, we have, we have an action item tonight to discuss more about it. But for 2021, we had budgeted 150,000, and I think we've spent less than 20 this year. If I'm right, I think we spent less than 20. I'm pretty positive about that. I can check it. Sorry, my computer that has QuickBooks, the Citrix wasn't working on, so I don't have that one right with me, and I'm sorry about that. But so that's where we are about with that, but we haven't, spent too much with wayfinding, and that's a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight, which would eat into this 150,000 that you've already approved for this year, just to clarify that. So that way that amount might be different, and that is one item that, given that we're going to have discussion later in the evening, we may want to revisit wayfinding's 2022 or 2023 budget, sorry, at our next meeting a little bit more. But I just wanted us all to be thinking about all these capital improvement projects at one time. So I hope I'm being clear, but if you have any questions or things you want more information on, I'm happy to get it to you.
Great, thank you. Well, do we want to now add new projects like the performance space? We haven't really talked much about Riverwalk, but we have talked about it several times, but we haven't put any monetary value on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure how to do that.
I guess the way that I would think with Riverwalk is, since it's exploratory, it's more, I think, if the board decided that that was something they wanted to explore, putting a dollar amount, a small dollar amount to get whatever upfront work we might need done. I think that would be kind of one way to think about it, or, just saying, hey, let's talk about it for another year, and then maybe we'll talk about a budget in another year. I'm just bringing forward the conversations that I've heard and the projects that keep coming up from many different groups. These are things that are happening in the cross conversations. So that's why I'm bringing it, just making sure it's a part of your conversation this evening.
Great, thank you.
I mean, can I just jump in at least on the performance space and Riverwalk?
Absolutely.
Is that all right to talk about now?
Absolutely.
So, I think with both of those, but let's take just like the performance space first and then the Riverwalk. But the Riverwalk, I think, would hold a lot. Well, back to the performance space. Sorry. If this were to get approved this year and go in, to be brought before the board in August, it would still take, let's say, I don't exactly know how much time, but let's say a month or 6 weeks for JVA to do their thing, and to be able to have that information sooner rather than later, to be able to go out and solicit design firms or designers, engineers. I think obviously getting a jump on it and getting that information is the sooner the better. And the Riverwalk, I think, would share a lot of the same, pieces of design development with easements, whether it's utility easements or private property, if there's floodplain issues going on at the Riverwalk, but just understanding, where are we talking about? What can it be? And the private property, public property, county, city property, just understanding, all of those to kind of inform design. So, I mean, I think that allocating some money for like a design development strategy for both of those that really starts with, understanding a lot of the big, limiting factors of development is important. And I would support putting, some funds towards design development of the Riverwalk, with like it being understanding what it is we have to work with and what we can and can't do, or what direction that can and can't go. And I apologize again, maybe some of this was talked about last night, but
no, this is
I couldn't make it.
This is great,
Okay.
Andrew. And so my question, based on your experiences, what would be a good amount for Riverwalk to do just that for us all to talk about?
Well, I mean, it would seem that we've got to identify, where exactly the Riverwalk is going and all of the properties that it's it would be, within or adjacent to, and it, or all those, imagine like, for example, like co-op or uh, everywhere on that side of the creek, Busey Brews and Crosscut, like being, having a river walk adjacent to those businesses, I think the businesses would be very happy about. And as far as like the, you know, the maintenance of that river walk and is it like an easement or what are the property, like not necessarily that we'd be, any ownership would take place, but what kind of, mutual cooperative agreements would need to be brought up. So I think there's like a legal component, there's a geographic component, then there's the obviously kind of a lot of just DJing that whole process between the various boards and private ownership. So like an administrative component, so like a administrative budget, maybe a legal budget, a geo budget. And I'm sure there's a lot I'm not thinking of, but those are what immediately comes to mind as far as some buckets to put funds into for those. And I would think it'd be, pretty easy to spend, 5,000 on each of those buckets, 5,000 on legal, 5,000 on administrative or more administrative maybe, because so much of this is just like, okay, a lot of different pieces to the puzzle. And as far as then also, you've got survey and, again, back to the floodplain, I'm sure that's, in the floodplain there. So construction considerations, I would think it would be pretty easy. You could say we could spend as much, at least on a preliminary, what immediately comes to mind, let's say, $10,000 to $20,000 on trying to get a lot of people communicating and creating a framework for how this Riverwalk would begin to coalesce realistically to kind of get it off the ground. And, for that matter, like the performance space, I don't exactly know, who is the best person to be talking to the city of Boulder about, like, for example, culvert, maintenance and impact, but, I know it's not an engineering firm. So, maybe there is a legal bucket that also is carved out for the performance space about, what are the, how are we doing this to really protect, the town and limit liability? And then, is there anything we can do to, work towards really getting, mitigating any getting sued by the city of Boulder for anything or messing with their, Barker, who can advise us on that. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, lawyers are a reality, and property issues in construction. So that's what I've got. I'll shut up and let other people
So
talk.
do you think like 25, 30,000 would be a safe estimate to do some of that next year potentially, just so that there's something for the board to kind of wrap their mind around? Or do you think that's too low of an amount of money?
No, I mean, I think that's a great start, because I mean, a river walk, and in my mind, I'm just picturing a walk from like the pedestrian bridge down to Teens Inc., right on the north side of the creek. And I don't know if it's that whole thing or if at times it, kind of gets away from the river, but I know there's a lot of private properties there, places where you've got, decks that go right up to the creek. So I don't know how that gets dealt with, or if there's, if the Riverwalk kind of, I know there's, the path by Chipeta Park. So again, I'm still trying to understand like what the design would be and the property considerations of, fundamentally, okay, these are the places, it definitely can't go, and these are the places it can go. And so it seems to me that between surveys and dialogue and, legal advice, 25 or 30,000 would be a good start. But there may be a few things I'm not thinking of, or maybe I'm taking, giving too much weight to one thing or another, but I'd love to hear
No,
other
I
people's
don't
input.
think that. That's why I just want to make sure that 25 to 30 is a better place for people to discuss versus 50. That's what I'm trying to kind of suss out or help.
And
facilitate.
maybe 50 is a better place. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Andrew.
This is Tanya, and I was thinking about both those. Also, and with the performance space, it would be nice to be able to get that funding like now, as opposed to waiting for this budget to get approved, for that $8,000. But, because then we would then have a better idea of how much we would need to come back and ask once it's done, to actually get something accomplished, like the landscaping and whatnot, physically done. So I don't know how we can do that with the getting that money, not on the next budget, but on like today or the next month's meeting. That's what I would like. And then I agree that having the money for Riverwalk already in the budget would then eliminate this coming in and asking for it later
Yeah.
as a supplemental budget, like we're doing and wasting time. So I think, to put in 25, 30,000 for a Riverwalk, and if it doesn't get used because nobody gets it going, it doesn't hurt anything, right?
No,
So-
it doesn't.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good idea. And then I would then hope that something similar could be put in for the performance space, to get more detailed plans done after their first plan's done. That would be my hope, if that could be put in the budget. But I would like to see if we could get this as a supplemental to this year's budget, the 8,000.
This is Rita. So the town is actually going to go before the board with a supplemental budget here in August. Miranda, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're trying for August 2nd. This is just for discussion. So yeah, that, if the DDA wants to, do that, then that would be the time, to do that is when we go before the board. So, if you want to consider doing that with the performance space, then, I encourage you to do that.
So that would involve making a decision tonight to bring to the town.
Well, so what would happen is you all would make that decision, but it would be an action item next month because I would still need to draft everything to take it to town. So it will still be an action item next month. That's why it could kind of get sussed out here, and then I would bring that back.
But the town meeting is August 2nd. So that would be before our next DDA meeting.
Right, but we're just also, it's just a discussion. Barbara.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, nothing would be set in stone either for us at that point. So, Kate, you might want to, join us.
Yes.
That meeting
Yes.
is what I'm recommending.
Yeah.
It's just the first review, the public hearing
Right.
for the second meeting in August or the first meeting in September.
Okay. So we have plenty of time.
Well, not plenty because it's the
plenty.
budget,
On the same part.
but we've got a
Around
little
here.
bit of time
But
to
more
work
time.
with.
We have till our next meeting anyways. Okay. Well, let's set that aside for a second. Is there anything else in this budget that we want to say, yes, we like this, no, we don't like this, so that we're putting this together before we move forward into the other discussion?
Well, because that's what I was going to say. I could start just going through the line and you could start talking about, yes, if you want to fund it and how much. Or did you have a different idea how you want to do it, Barb?
No, that sounds great. Let's go line by line and
Yep. All right. Beautification.
I'd like to see it at $30,000.
Do I have a second for that?
I second.
Okay, I will pencil it in for 30 for right now. And again, I'm going to skip back to wayfinding.
Yep.
Let's go for the Ned Fire Protection District IGA.
30,000.
Second.
All right, thank you all. Event support.
We're halfway through the year. We have spent a little over half our money, so it seemed like it was a good amount. I say we pencil it in at the same amount next year.
Second that.
All right.
Skip to traffic next.
Yeah, I was going to say that's exactly traffic, traffic and safety support.
I would like to see that increased substantially, even though we haven't had that many applications and a little less than half of the budget is still left. I do think that the farmers market will probably apply for that and for some of their events. So I would like to double that to 40,000 for next year, and I think it will help substantially in terms of attendance and particularly traffic flow. So I move that we increase that line item to what is it, 20,000 this year, 40,000 for next year.
I'll second that. This is Tanya.
Anybody else have any comments on that?
That seems like a really big jump based on just the farmer's market.
Well, there'll be others. It is a big jump, but the success of the use of it was substantial. It was particularly for Frozen Dead Guy days. It made a big difference. Traffic moved, albeit slowly. It kept moving, and that was important because one of the things that we find in traffic movement, even if people are moving at 1 mile an hour, they're far happier than if they end up in a stop where they have 30 seconds and then 2 minutes of go and then another 30 seconds. If it just keeps moving slowly, they're a lot happier, and you do move a lot more cars that way.
Can someone please clarify for me, how is this, so generally traffic and safety support, do events pay for that partially their own budgets and then we support part of it as well? Is that the way it historically works?
So historically, we haven't paid anything until this year to help with these costs. It was due to the cost, some feedback from the community about how costs were getting and how, we want to make parking and driving through Ned good for all the businesses to keep people moving, keep people wanting to come up during those. So that's really where the spirit of this came from. And this is the first time that people have come to us through that application and asked for funding and let us know, kind of what their costs are. And then we chipped in a little bit to help offset them.
So this is our first year with it.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, town does require a parking and traffic plan.
Yes.
Depending on the event size, we may require you to an event organizer to contract with a traffic control specialist. Some people have brought in parking people. And so it's really gonna depend on the magnitude, and town has the authority to decide what level of traffic control we need, which is why I think a lot of this funding came to be, because that can be very costly.
Thank you, Miranda.
This is Tanya. Is it possible for the money to be used, could town solicit that money to help with Eldora traffic on those busy Saturday mornings where traffic gets really stalled out at the circle, or leaf peeping days where we really could use some help with traffic.
So
So
leaf
if we don't have
peeping,
it in our budget.
leaf peeping is absolutely what part of this money is for, the traffic and safety support. That's absolutely what was envisioned. Eldora, that gets into a different situation just because this money is to benefit the CBD. And I know that you can make lots of arguments how all of that connects, but that's where it gets tricky with doing something like that that impacts outside of the district, even though it does impact the district too. We all realize that, but I just, that's why that hasn't been utilized in that way.
Oh, okay. Well, and did we use it last year during leaf peeping season to help?
No, but we had
Didn't
this
have it.
conversation right around there, and that's why we decided that this
Yeah.
needed to be a part of that.
So since it'll probably get used up quite a bit in September, then I imagine some of that. Well, I don't think it hurts to put it in the budget, and if it doesn't get used, then we know for the next time that it's too much.
Excuse me, I just wanted to chime in here because I don't remember this being thought of as used for just a general blanket for leaf peeping seasons. I think it was specifically for events that happen.
It was for events and for leaf peeping. That was one of the things that Ron brought out in it, because you're exactly right, Steve. It was for events as well, due to what we were seeing, like Miranda talked about. But that was part of the conversation, was to have some way to help with leaf peeping. So that was what one of Ron's points were when we were discussing and approving it.
Oh, okay. And
Also,
what was going to be the mechanism for paying this out
That's
for leaf peeping?
exactly. We didn't have that figured out yet.
Okay.
So that needs to be figured out as how we would do that, because maybe it is working with town to do that. I don't know what makes the most sense,
Right.
but I do know that there was the thought that some of that money would be used to help with that, to help the businesses keep people in town instead of keeping driving through.
Right, right. And also just a tiny bit of clarity maybe for Scott and Tanya. I think that the way this kind of arose was that festival people were coming to us and complaining that it's almost impossible to put on a festival in town because the town mandates this very large expenditure for traffic safety. And that's important to town that they have that in there, but it was really killing, or we were hearing that it was killing a lot of potential events which we feel are good for town. So I think that's just how it ties back into it. Like, this was a way to put it in two different buckets, but to give some substantial support so that we could have events that might otherwise be untenable without this.
well, and also the leaf peeping thing and the Eldora traffic. I don't know if I brought it up, and maybe I didn't, but I will now. I would like to see if we couldn't partner with Eldora to get them to pay a portion of the a flagger's cost on those event days, or those days when their activity creates so much congestion in town. I haven't approached them yet, but I certainly will for the next season.
Ron, I could not agree more. Thank you.
Who made that comment?
That was Scott.
Well, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Well,
This is Tanya. I just have one more thing to say. I think a lot of event promoters don't even know this money exists. So I think, I hear a lot of comments about the same thing you're saying, how it's prohibitive to put on an event because of this cost and this cost. And I think the people making these comments have no idea that they could get the cost of those rangers offset through this with a simple application. So somehow we get the word out more, perhaps you could get more events or people wanting to do it, to give it a try, knowing that they could get some of this money offset.
Yeah, we have absolutely been working on that. And so this year, I am proud, the board should be proud too, that we have granted money to all the events that have occurred in town thus far this year. And so, and we are trying to get more on people's radar, and Stephanie has helped a lot with that.
The farmer's market never got any for the Party in the Peaks. I don't think
So-
anybody knew
They
about
didn't
that.
know about it. They didn't apply.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so I did have a conversation with someone at the farmer's market. They did reach out and I sent an application. I just never received anything back, but I
Okay.
have been in conversation with the farmer's market before.
Good.
Somebody
I'm
did reach
gonna
out to me.
Make sure that Jordan gets in touch with you to get those grants. for
Absolutely.
farmers.
That's fine. But so we are really trying to be more on everyone's radar. So I appreciate your help with that. But I had reached somebody from the farmer's market and I don't know who it was, did reach out earlier this year.
Oh,
And
it
I
might have
sent
been
them,
Melissa, and then she quit. All right, well, we'll keep.
you know what? That might have been it, but
Yeah. All
I'll
right, well,
send
thank
you the information
Oh,
and then you can
please, I'll
share it with the
forward it to
farmer.
Jordan. All right, thanks.
So Kate, in establishing a number for this line item, I'm tending to agree with Ron's position on this one. And, but I do think that because it's the first year that we've actually been doing this, that doubling it seems like a pretty big step. And I'm wondering if he would be open to the idea of maybe setting a number at 30,000 instead of 40,000 for the coming year, thereby increasing it by 50% rather than doubling it.
Sure, I see a mad rush for this when people find out about it, so that's fine. It's a pilot program. It's something that we have to develop. We now have in the town a woman who's a certified flagger trainer, so we could probably impose on Miranda to let her train a few flaggers, and then we'd have local circulation of the money, and we'd have local people who could handle this. But we found from the events that it was very successful, and the fact that nobody's dived on it yet doesn't mean they won't.
Yeah. The other thing I want to reiterate is I also agree very much with what Ron was saying earlier about approaching Eldora to try and be part of this with us.
Right, thank you. And just a reminder, this is just our first conversation about it. Next month, we're going to go through all these items again, and if people feel that it needs to go back up to 40 or stay at 30 or go back down to 20, we can also revisit this at that time too. If you have some different thoughts over the next month, but we can right now I have 30,000 in there.
Great, thank you, Kate.
Are we ready to move on to public art?
Let's do it.
All right. So for public art, we had budgeted last year for 10, but our project became $14,110. So I open it up to you to how much would you like to spend on public art, or would you like to spend on public art in 2023?
This is Danielle. I have been talking with our artist over at the Rock Shop. She had mentioned that we could have saved a little bit of money on prep work for the mural. So we are learning where we can save expenses and make sure that what we are putting into it is worthwhile. Some research on artists and their experience shows that we are going in the way of quality. So our murals will last. So the money that we are putting into them is well worthwhile. And our prep work is going well. So I want to let you guys know that the money that we have been putting into this is being well spent and organized and efficient. If we want to do a similar output next year, what I'm learning is to always consider inflation, the chemicals used for cleaning, prepping, and paint will probably go up, but I'm not following that as closely as some of the other construction know-how people. But that's just an abbreviation of where we are with spending, how we're spending, and how it's covering what we are doing and where we're at with it. Thank you.
Danielle, do you have an amount that you think that you would like to see?
I would really appreciate 15 I know that we are looking at the Riverwalk. Aside from just murals, we want to talk about three-dimensional work, which will probably be expensive because of up here, the wind, not having it fall over on people. And not being a 3D artist myself, I don't know a lot about it. We also want to think about mosaics, which would be different from the murals, but add variety. And it would be nice to have about 1,500, which is where we're at this year. However, the projects we are doing are large scale, and we do have the property owner and the business owner going in on a project, which means that we're actually spending quite a bit more on it. But we also took into consideration a couple things and raised the budget. And I would like to maintain what we have available so we don't do that next year. That way, potentially we could have money set aside for projects like the covered bridge artwork, as people bring attention to something that we could be taking care of. I know that the sculptures over at the Eldora turnoff, those would like to be replaced, as in placed in new positions around town, and looking into safely taking them down. I know some of them have electrical work, safely connecting them and reinstalling them so that they are good for the weather up here would be amazing. So that might be one of our main projects that we'll look at going into the new year. And I was supposed to get a quote for that, but I have not received it. But those are some ideas, and I would like to see 1,500 and then stay within budget, and hopefully consider what our projects are and keep a little bit on the side in case people from the public bring to awareness things that they would like us to do for them again.
Danielle, I'm very interested that somebody take the initiative to make postcards and sell them in the visitor center to possibly provide some revenue for your committee. Has that idea been tossed around at all in your committee, and do you have any ideas on that?
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. We were going to be looking into that this year, but it was not in our budget. There might be a little bit to start contemplating it. It might be worth finding investment to get that idea up and going, because it would be generating income for the committee and our purpose. One of
If we
our
increase
goals.
your budget $3,000 or $4,000 specifically for a postcard sub-project, do you think that the sales of postcards could actually return that money to the DDA and have some surplus for the committee? Is that
Absolutely. And if we had that specifically set aside for that project, then we wouldn't spend it on other stuff. And then if we didn't, it would be a good study to have that available in order to jumpstart the reproduction and sales increase in different venues, different businesses. One of the things we were talking about, aside from postcards, greeting cards, prints and t-shirts, would be ideal reproductions that would raise the income to not only the businesses but for Nederland Public Art, which would help support what we are doing. I think if we had a specific increase for that in mind, and then we can keep an eye on what it generates, and if we make it back, and if we have a surplus afterward, that would be wonderful.
so would you please put $4,000 in your budget request for this specific sort of project? T-shirts, mugs, glasses, pins.
If we're up there 19, I would just make a motion. I think we're at like almost, I would make a motion to increase public art then to $20,000, right? Because you were at 15,000, and yeah, we're talking. And I don't know who owns this. This is kind of an aside, but it'd be great. I just see it it's kind of got a viral, somewhat of a viral thing. You know, the moose with the googly eyes and the hula hoop. It's kind of become a part of Nederland culture on a postcard or T-shirt. It seems like that would sell. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that moose is already on some t-shirts, and there's also the horse crossing with the fairy and unicorn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the reproduction and sales of the public artwork would be phenomenal. If we raised it to $20,000, I would bring it to the committee to ensure that at least 4,000 of that is specifically set aside for art reproduction and to do a study. We do have a new member on the committee who's going to help us with accounting so that we can keep an eye on these types of numbers and see where we're at and how we can support the committee's purpose.
And I do want to note that the artists that we've worked with are also very on board with this because they want this program to continue and they like the idea that this would help make that happen. All right, so I have 20,000 for public art.
Danielle, I also want to be sure that the artists get a small royalty on every sale.
Yes, we're working with that in our contract. And as we get into being able to keep track of those sales and reproductions, to learn how to make sure that they get royalties also.
Great, thank you, Danielle. That all sounds great.
All
Okay,
right.
let's move forward.
Yeah. Okay. The covered bridge. Let's go back to the covered bridge. How are you all thinking about how you'd like to allocate funds to work with the covered bridge?
I think, you know, if it was 8,000 for a roof and 8,000 for you know, kind of the flower boxes, you know, and these are rough budget flower boxes and surface repairs of the potholes. You know, that's 16,000 with some of the other things that were talked about. But then I don't know if like an engineering fee was specifically kind of thought of in those budget numbers, but my guess is that you know, an engineer's report, if it was from a larger firm like JBA, you know, could potentially be 1,000 to 1,500. And that wouldn't, you know, I'm hopeful that there really isn't significant structural work that needs to happen, but it seems like it'd be pretty easy to spend 20,000 on the roof, all the other incidentals, and an engineer's report. And then if there was structural work needed, that would be above and beyond the 20,000. But you know, we obviously wouldn't know that until everything else is done. So I have not been under the bridge and looked at it, and I'm not an engineer, so I would just say we shouldn't be expecting to be able to do, you know, structural remediation work within the budget of $20,000. I think that can get the roof, the other work, and an engineering report done. But I would say, you know, start there and then see what happens.
So 20,000 is where you're saying is the start there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. How do people feel about $20,000 for covered bridge?
I like $20,000 for the covered bridge, especially if we can have the town go in on some of that after we get the assessment.
Thank you.
That sounds great.
Let's go to the Riverwalk.
Can I ask for a clarification on that?
Sure.
So the budget is somewhere between 16 and 20,000, or that's what we expect will need to be spent on the covered bridge. The hope is that the town will go in 50-50 with us, and we still want to put 20,000 in our own budget for that.
Yeah, if I see your point, Scott. I think you know, yes, I think the hope is that town will go 50-50. And I guess if there was structural, are we then covering ourselves for, potentially an additional amount for structural work or any other work that needs to happen? I don't know if it's smart to go ask for more than we need, but you're right. We could just, know that it's going to be 20 and expect the town to be in for half and only budget 10. I don't know what other people think, but
I think in general, it's okay to over budget because it's not like we have to spend the money, and it's more of a placeholder. So I think we could still, work together with town if we feel like it, we'd want to split that, and then have, maybe 10,000 or so more left in the budget if we needed to spend it on reparations for the bridge.
All right. Well, I have 20,000 in the budget for covered bridge.
Great, thank you.
So now we can move on to Riverwalk, and then we'll do performance space and talk about wayfinding.
I'd like to make a preliminary comment about the Riverwalk. I think there's almost unanimous support among the merchants on First Street for a Riverwalk, with the exception of the co-op. And where I think we should start is having a committee approach the co-op, because this has been on the burners now for about 10 years. And it's the co-op who has refused to consider a Riverwalk going through their property. But their board has changed. I think their philosophy may have changed, but I don't want to budget anything right now until we have a good idea of what their position is, because unless they're willing to give the DDA or the town or whoever an easement like everybody else will do, we shouldn't spend any money on any kind of studies or any kind of surveys or maps, because we need their buy-in. And I really believe that at this point, a committee could explain that and work with them and do it. So I would recommend that before we put anything in the budget, we have one of our committees work on getting an agreement with the co-op so that they feel that they're not being mistreated. And I think they do feel that they were mistreated by a member of the DDA several years ago.
And you think that that will take a year? So you don't want to have any
I think
money?
you could talk to them in the next 30 days.
Well, but then you wouldn't have money available if you all didn't decide to put it in a bucket now. It would still have to wait a year. Even if they were on board, nothing could happen then because there was no money put aside. I just want to make sure that everybody kind of understands that that's the way that that would have to play out, that we would still have to wait until another budget cycle.
Oh, okay. All I'm saying is, sure, let's put some money in the Riverwalk and have some ideas. But I'm making the point that this is where the hangup is,
Yeah.
where we need to start. I don't care what we put in the budget. It's fine if you put something in the budget,
Okay.
but nevertheless, we must get the buy-in from the co-op, and we don't have
I totally agree. I totally agree that it's the first step, and I think everybody is kind of on board with that. We understand that that is the most important and crucial thing, is getting that buy-in and building that relationship. I absolutely. So that's a great point. I just didn't want us to not put money in there or be in the situation where we want to start getting some momentum and we're not really able to do that. That would be something I wouldn't want to have happen.
Well, we can put it in the budget unless Steve Carroll says.
Well, that's
we
up
don't.
to the board. I just am just trying to do my job and bring up some of the different points.
Okay, well, I'd love to see them agree and move forward with something in next year's budget. So I have no objection to putting something in the budget. I'm just bringing up the point that we've got to have buy-in as the very first step.
And what would that amount be, Ron? What would be an amount that we could put in to just start the process, regardless? We get.
Well, I'd say I forgot what Andrew said, but I think 30,000 is a reasonable figure to do the things JVA would be doing for us, because you're going to need a topographical survey. You're going to need a lot of civil engineering on the thing. So those studies and those surveys could easily eat up $30,000 in the initial budget. So that's kind of my off the top of my head guess. And I'd let Andrew make an off the top of his head guess, and we'll average the two.
You know, I also think this is Steve Perot. I also think that, you know, the Riverwalk is a kind of a, I guess, well-liked project. And it has been on the burner, like Ron said, for about 10 years. And so I feel like if we had, you know, maybe 30,000 or whatever Andrew and others think, just some seed money to get, you know, some preliminary work done if we have the buy-in from the co-op, I feel like the Board of Trustees would probably not have a hard time allowing us to supplement our budget if we get in, you know, if things go great guns and next year we need more money for the Riverwalk and it's a project that has legs. I think that we would be able to amend our budget. So, you know, I don't think it's too crucial as long as we have enough sort of seed money to get going if it's a go.
Thanks, Steve.
And I mean, there's ancillary projects that could work, a footbridge over the creek to connect the south side and walk and the river walk on the north side of the creek could be included. So dream away.
This is Scott Papich. I think that sounds like a good idea to put something in the budget. I think Andrew and Ron, I think your numbers were pretty close together. So the average is right there in the ballpark. I think that sounds good. But in addition to that, I think it would behoove us to maybe reach out to some other communities who have done this to give us some information that surveyors and designers and engineers can't give us. And I'm thinking, you know, like Salida, for example, I mean, their project is much, much bigger than what we would be able to even begin to do. But I think it'd be great to talk to some of the staff there, the town staff, and learn what their experiences were around, you know, the impact on local businesses and maintenance costs and how did they approach easement issues, just to hear from them what their experience was. And I think this is a super exciting project. I'd be happy to go and reach out to somebody there and initiate that conversation. We wouldn't have to pay any consultants fees to do it.
I think Scott just created a new committee.
Yeah, I was going to say, so what will happen is that after, if this all gets approved and we move forward that way, then we would create committee for Riverwalk because there isn't one and there already is a performance one since we haven't really explored the Riverwalk in this way. So that would be our next steps after this.
I'd love to be involved in that. Thank you.
It's not, we have done that in the past. As I said, that in the 10 years that we've done it, we've talked to Pueblo and 2 or 3 other communities and asked how they did it and how they got it through. And so some of that work is fallen by the wayside, of course, but
it's in the historic files. We have
congratulations on being the chair of this committee.
Thank you. That all sounds great.
Okay. So I have $30,000 for the Riverwalk in there right now. All right. Next, we'll talk about performance space. And so I think the biggest thing we need to figure out is if you want to ask for $8,000 in the supplemental next month, or if you would like to lump it into a larger amount for 2023. That's really the decision point here. And then what would that amount be?
And also, Kate, that it could be both.
Yes.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. Thank you, Steve.
Sure.
I think Tanya and I are of the same mind that getting the 8,000 immediately, and then, you know, I don't think we've personally had a dialogue about what the proposed budget might be for next year, but I mean, I think that there'd be a couple of different ways to get design work done for that project, but I think a budget certainly of it, at least at least 30,000 would seem to be like what we probably want for 2023. And why why that much? Why not more? Why not less? I don't really. I mean, I'm just thinking of, what it costs. I mean, you'd pay if you went and had just a single family home designed with all just, basic engineering and structural design. You'd pay an architect probably $15,000 to do that. And, yes, that gets you a home, but there's and performance space, well, it's just a flat piece of land. However, the bathrooms, you've got commercial accessible restrooms. That's kind of a structure, kind of an animal in and of itself, where that would be more architectural. Then there'd be the geotech firm dealing with the floodplain, the soils, the drainage. I could see that very easily being that $20,000. Say the bathroom design budget might be $15,000 to $20,000. And there'd be some minor electrical engineering if there is any basic lighting out there. And again, no one's really talked about this, but again, I'm just, if I had to, without really having a design yet, thinking of the firms that would need to be engaged, there would be a structural engineer, an architectural firm, a geotech firm, and a mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer for the bathrooms. So each one of those, I guess the mechanical, electrical, plumbing firm would probably be the least amount of money, and you could probably get away with maybe $5,000 to $7,000 for the MEPs for the bathrooms. So that's, if we said 15, at least 15 to 20, well, 20,000 for civil, probably not less than 15,000 for architectural, 5,000 for structural, and another 5,000 for structural. That's what, 40,000.
45.
I mean, I'd like to see 50,000 honestly in a budget for the performance space.
50 for performance. Okay.
That's just rough yellow pad, not even a yellow pad, but and I'd love to hear others' thoughts, but that's my thoughts.
And then just to be clear, so you're proposing 50 for 2023, and you'd like me to bring next month the proposal for supplemental for the 8,000. I just want to make sure I'm hearing what you said
I
correctly.
think so.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So
I
that's
just want to make an additional comment, just saying like, how it's what I've been hearing with the BOT, all these grants are available but they all want everything to be basically like shovel ready. If you got the
Yes.
money, ready to go. So our goal would be like in this next year to get some sort of plan that would be
shovel
considered
ready.
shovel ready so
Yeah.
that then we can start looking for,
The leverage money.
yeah.
Yep. No, that's great.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so we've got 50,000 for performance space, and I will be bringing back an aim for action next month for $8,000 supplemental to be sent to the Board of Trustees.
Yeah, I'm just looking at something the chat that Danielle put in, and maybe it's because
Oh.
she's having problems with internet, and I don't
Oh,
really understand
sorry,
it.
I didn't see something went into the chat.
It says, I don't know what this means about Bryant
Put it in
House.
chat because it was a joke of a thought about the Bryant House, which fell off of our radar. That's all.
Oh, I don't remember.
Not
I got
that, it's
before my
not that
time.
crazy. Something needs to happen to the Bryant House, and it's not going to happen on the RTD lot.
No, that's why I thought it was just funny. Wasn't it originally moved from down by the reservoir?
I don't know where it came from, but I know it's just kind of
That's the
sitting.
house that's by the RTD. I never really thought about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I put it in chat because it was more of a joke. That's all.
Right. I just was like not understanding. I'm not good at jokes. All right, but anyway, thanks everybody.
Okay. So, now we have wayfinding, and I don't know if we want to go through the action item this evening and then revisit wayfinding when we discuss budget next month. I don't know if that makes more sense because right now, we have 150,000 in the budget and we're still working on that and what the next looks like. But I guess I will send it to Steve to see what he thinks would be best for the conversation.
Okay, thanks, Kate. Yeah, I think we don't need to go to the action item in order to address
Oh,
it here
okay.
in the budget. That's my
Okay.
feeling, because it is pretty high level
Okay.
ideas. And if I could just say something about wayfinding now.
Absolutely.
that'd be
Take
great.
over.
Okay, sounds cool. So regardless of what happens with tonight's action item, I think everyone involved with the wayfinding is in agreement that we need to hire some type of a wayfinding company to, help us along just because we're not wayfinders. So whether we go out and try to get an RFP going and, get a few competitive bids for the next phase, or we go with merge, I think we'll find that it's going to be somewhere in the range of about 20,000 for the next step in wayfinding, which I think we can do, starting as soon as we're approved and we have the company we want to work with, because that can go on through the, fall and into the winter.
So that would be a part of the $150,000 now. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure I'm
Sure.
understanding. Okay.
Yeah, I think so because we were budgeting that
That's what I thought.
for this year, right?
Yes,
Is that right?
exactly.
Okay. Yeah. And and we were thinking about the next stage at that point as well. And
Yep.
as I recall, I didn't bring all my wayfinding papers home with me, but what I remember was my thinking based on the merge from phase one and their high level budget discussion that we went through. I think that, and also including some inflation, I think that somewhere in the range of 130,000 or so, 140,000 would manage to get us the all of the consulting that we need, as well as designing and building and installing the sort of limited set of signs that we were planning on. So I think that somewhere in the range of 150 or potentially a little more. Let me back up because I think that for this year we have the 150 and we
Yep.
might be using about 20 of that this year. And then I think the 130 could most likely get us through to finish the whole installation and everything of signs next summer in next year's budget, but it might take a little bit more depending on cost increases and things.
Okay.
So I think we're in the range of it right now with the 150, pushing 130 or 140
40
into next
forward.
year.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
That
And
makes a
maybe,
lot of sense.
I don't know. Yeah, and I don't know where we stand overall with the budget yet, but maybe it makes sense to just say 150 for next year.
Yeah.
And we're going to use probably about 20 this year. So it would be a little bit of an increase of the overall project.
Yeah. So
which-
and like I said, I think we've spent like 16 maybe is what I think we've spent total thus far this year. So another 20 and
Okay.
then so we'll carry over that remainder, but keep it at 150. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think that would be my recommendation,
Okay.
and I think it's probably, probably in the realm of what we would need, potentially a tiny bit more, but so I think if we can push 150 into next year
Yep.
and still use, what we were
Some.
going to be
Yep.
using for this year, I think that my, high level ideas are that would cover us in order to do the whole stage one of, and we'll go more into it in the action item, but that would cover I believe that would cover us.
Does that mean the entire wayfinding project is only like 210,000 or 220,000?
Yeah, potentially a little bit below that. might be closer to about 200 for what, because we've reduced the scope of what we initially were thinking we would do. As we got through the stage 1 of wayfinding, we realized that, you know, we could reduce it and have a big impact and actually achieve the main goals of wayfinding at this stage with fewer signage and a more limited scope.
Can I ask a question, Steve?
Yeah.
So I guess you mentioned, you know, alternative to merge, and I know that's kind of part of the agenda, the next aim. I don't know if we're gonna get into that or talk about that, you know, next. So maybe I could just wait to that. But I guess I just had questions on, you know, what the impetus was to, and maybe I should just save this conversation for the AIM discussion. This isn't necessarily a budget. This doesn't need to, you know, I know the budget can be independent of merge, so I'll defer to your recommendation of the, you know, 150, but I'll save my question for the kind of the AIM.
Okay, thanks. I think I know what your question was going to be, but yeah, we can just discuss it in the AIM, or I think that might be fine. But essentially, if you were asking about the, you know, for merge or not merge, I think we will probably end up wanting to hire someone for about the same amount of money. So
Right.
it shouldn't
Yeah,
affect the
no, I get
budget
it. Yeah.
discussion much.
Yeah, okay.
Are there any further questions about wayfinding budget, or does that amount work for everybody?
That works for me.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all. We are done with that piece of things. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. That was great.
Are we going to have any new proposed projects in addition to these on the agenda?
Well, you could add them right now. I mean, these were just everything that I had been hearing about and talking about with people. So you could add something now. This would be the time.
Okay, I would like to do that. I don't know how many of the board members have been following what the planning board is doing and what the discussions have been about parking, but the planning board is recommending paid parking. And to implement a program like that, the town is going to need funds. And let me go through my entire proposal before your jaws hit the floor. I don't think the town will have the funds to implement something like that. And I think it's going to be fairly expensive. And I would propose that we budget a figure for a loan to the town, which would be paid back by revenues from the paid parking program. And it would probably have to be something that would be done on a trial basis and modified to a certain extent. And I think the town would be, and the parking guys that I've talked to said that initiating a paid parking program is always difficult because nobody wants to pay for something that they've been getting for decades for free. So my proposal is that we take a sum of money, a substantial sum of money, and consider it a loan to the town for a parking project, whereby the DDA actually gets paid back from the revenues from that. And this helps the town not have to try and budget for something they're going to take a lot of flack for, but it's necessary. The parking situation in the downtown area is such that you have all kinds of people parking and taking up parking spaces that could be for customers. Cars park, skiers come and park right on First Street all day long, hikers, bikers, you name it. Employees, there's just all 4 or 5 categories that are plugging up the parking situation. And there's many studies been done that show how effective a paid parking program can produce additional tax revenues through increased sales by turnover from parking spaces that have been occupied by all day by someone who isn't even a customer. So I would like to propose that we budget a loan to the town for $100,000 or less, depending on what is needed in the event the town board decides to go forward with a parking program. So there's two contingencies there. But I think that's something that we're going to be asked to participate in for sure. And I think we would be ahead of the curve to actually consider it right now. Any questions? Wow.
Yeah,
Further at the floor.
I have a question. Ron, how would you, presuming the town were to go with this agreement, what would happen if the, parking fees weren't paid or didn't meet what, the terms of the loan, either because of lack of enforcement or people just weren't willing to pay, and then, effectively the meters weren't generating the revenue that was expected, and basically the loan would, effectively be in default? What would you do about that?
You made three assumptions there that I want to address. The first is there wouldn't be any meters, there wouldn't be any infrastructure. The program would probably all be done by app on telephones. Secondly, the revenues generated would include enforcement. And that means that the part of that $100,000 would certainly have to go towards enforcement personnel who would not be police officers. And in most communities, they aren't anymore. They used to be in the early stages of it. And so what was the third thing? Can you remember? I'm sorry.
Well, it's just, what happens when that money can't be paid for whatever reason it is, like what remedy would you see, or how would you deal with that situation?
Well, you would be taking a loss. And so in terms of whether or not the town could pay it back, you might end up with modifying the loan payments, extending the term. But in most of the studies that have been done by and I should mention I've been studying this stuff, as you know, for quite a number of years. And quite often you have to modify your original plans because these things start as trials and nobody knows exactly how it's going to work. But Idaho Springs implemented it a year or two ago, and I haven't heard from them any defaults occurring. And in fact, I haven't, in the number of parking groups that I've talked to, and it's been several, none of them have stated that they ever had a 100% failure. They've had to modify agreements, and that happens even with banks that make loans when their lenders get in trouble. The banks even have what they call workout officers. But again, we're supposed to be helping the business community and in so doing, increasing the sales tax revenue. And this is one thing that has done both. The program itself has produced revenue, and in so doing, it's produced additional revenue from the turnover of cars because more customers have been able to park. So it's a good question. I can't say that you would be a success, but I think the probability for success is far higher than the probability for failure. Other questions?
I have a kind of a question and a comment. I know you were saying everything would need to go through phone apps and everything, but I've had actually quite a few conversations with many business owners and people in town. And the idea that seems to be the overwhelming majority of people I've spoken to is that they would prefer to actually see the old timey meters because it's more rustic, it's more fitting with Nederland and its image and everything like that. And I also wondered, somebody brought up,
Am I the only one that she's dropped out? I can't hear anything she's saying.
oh, shoot.
Oh, no, now we can hear
Okay,
you, Catherine. We
you're
just
back.
couldn't hear you for a
Catherine.
minute.
Okay, yeah, internet's been coming and going, and of course, probably a lot of you know that there's no cell phone in Gilpin County right now, apparently. But basically, that's something that people brought up is that people come up from down below and they've got their Sprint cell phone and it doesn't work in Nederland, and so I worry about only having a cell phone app as the only way that this parking might work. I think as far as like whether or not the town could default or whatever like that, there could be some kind of a deal where a certain percentage of the revenue that came back to the DDA until the loan was paid off without necessarily making it a specific term. But so I do think that it's a good idea and something that we should put funds towards to be able to help the town move with that. But I do have concerns about having it be by phone app or by only phone app.
They do. The guys have thought of this that have got these phone apps, and there's various ways that you can. Some people just don't have cell phones, and you can basically put a bill on their car and have them mail it in. At this conference I went to, Toledo, um, Ohio has implemented a system like this, and they took down all their meters, all their gates, all their barricades, and everything else. And there are a few people in this day and age that don't use phones, and maybe Sprint doesn't work up here. So you can have a manual system where people can just mail in payment. Will people default on that? Will people not do it? Yes. Is there people who game these systems? Yes. Are there cheaters? Yes. But 99% of the people expect to pay for parking. And when you have situations like that, why, there are always exceptions that have to be dealt with, and you got to figure out a way to do it. Parking meters are pretty much out for a variety of reasons. There's a lot of maintenance. You're dealing with cash. That takes special insurance. It takes bonding of an individual to collect the cash. And it's not done almost anywhere anymore, other than places who still have their old meters in place and don't want to implement a new system. Basically, what Nederland would be doing would be leapfrogging from old technology to new technology, and not using kiosks or meters or barricades, but simply a system that seems to be working and seems to be working very well. And it was ironic at this convention, it was the old guard of hardware guys against the new guard of tons of all under 30s writing software to create these programs. So no matter what we do, it's going to be an experiment. And I think it's going to be an experiment that will be worth our while. And I think that's what the Planning Commission has come up with independently. There's got to be some method to start trying, because the problem that we've got in terms of congestion, hogging the spaces, it's got to be solved one way or another. And I'm just saying that I'd like to see us start thinking seriously about it. And, we put a line item in saying, okay, we're willing to loan the town 50,000, 100,000, as long as exactly what you said, we get paid back, not necessarily a fixed amount, but a percent of the revenue until the money's paid back. And whether or not this will fly, I don't know, but I'm sure trying to promote it to see if it will, because I want to be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. And I think we have a problem and we're all part of it right now. So I want us to put our heads together, and this is a step that I'm proposing that might work. I'm not going to guarantee it will, because I don't know, but I think many, many communities have done it. There's lots of purveyors out there honking their wares, almost falling over each other to prove to municipalities that they can do a better job than the next guy. So I would like to do this, and I hope my discussion here has had some positive influence on the board.
This
Thank
is
you.
Dan. Yeah, I think it would be really great that we put this in the budget and then have a discussion on how best to utilize it, whether that's in the means of a loan or another way to implement parking being paid for. I like the idea.
To a certain extent, the DDA taking the lead in this may take some heat off of the Board of Trustees because they're going to get a lot of heat. Nobody wants to pay for something they've been getting for free for decades, but yet we got potholes in town. We got a lot of problems in town that need funds, and this is one of the ways that we can help the town access more funds. And it's done almost everywhere else. And I think the town owns a lot of real estate, namely streets, that could be financially very productive for them.
Yeah. Well, last thing, and then I don't have anything else, but I know at least the city of Boulder kiosks also allow phone app use, and it seems that those are everywhere, and it seems to work well for. And I know we're not the city of Boulder. I'm not saying that what they have will work for us, but I think if that's might do it with some reservations of only phone based. If there was an actual digital kiosk that validated license plates as well as allowed phone use,
Andrew, do those also take credit cards?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, the city of Boulder's recently changed to a much more phone app oriented system. They implemented it, I think, a year or so ago, and I like it. And it one of the things it does is it'll give you a notice 15 minutes ahead of your time expiring, so you can pay for more if you want to, right on your phone. There's a lot of novel aspects. The time is getting late, and I just wanted to make a short presentation and see if we can't put a line item in there and get this discussion really rolling. So my proposal is
I think Ron's right. I support getting some funds on the budget. I don't know what those kiosks cost. I don't know what the systems cost. I don't know if 100 is, way more or not enough. But I agree. I think taking the lead on it, and it's something the planning commission and it's been talked about, and just driving and living in town and trying to go anywhere, and not wanting to avoid town all weekend, and be looking forward to I guess that's whatever we can do to help be part of the solution. I think is a good idea.
Could we put this $100,000 idea on our budget discussions? Any objections?
Could recommend that we kind of documentation or some type of paperwork that substantiates the number 100,000 that shows everything that pays for.
Can we see?
If we put it in the budget, I'll try and get a couple of purveyors to make proposals for us. Actually, I would really prefer to see a committee from the DDA work with town staff and the elected officials to select purveyors or bidders who would come and these guys are falling all over each other, so they'll come make a presentation at no charge. I'm sure there's 2 or 3 of them that had jumped at the opportunity to do it. So that's how I'd approach this. But if we don't have something in the budget to support what they propose, and you know, that's a figure I just pulled out of thin air, because I don't really know how much it costs. Might be more, might be less, but I have a feeling initially with the way these guys are going that it would be substantially less. But you're in for a commitment
Ron,
of probably 2 years.
do you think, Ron, with between now and next month, you'd be able to ask a couple of them just to get a rough idea of cost of the systems?
That's going to be my proposal, is that there's an aim on this. So it could still be included in our budget. We could move it to the budget next month when we're working on our final budget. But maybe since there seems to be a lot of questions, maybe that there's an aim on what this would be, and then Ron has time to do a better due diligence on what the amount should really be to be considering. Does that sound like something that could work for everybody?
That would be better, yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, I'll solicit some of these purveyors, and maybe it would be worthwhile having a couple of them talk to the board at the next meeting for no longer than 20 minutes.
I think getting a good sketch of the idea, Ron, you and I can work on this, but I think getting a good sketch of what you're talking about and what those real costs could be, I think would be really helpful in helping the board be able to get a line item together. And then, those presentations could maybe come after, because I don't know that there's enough time, but we can work on that together.
Okay, that's fine. I'd love to do that. And I'll get going on it right away and see if we can't put a more closer line item in terms of what these proposals are. But I noticed that they're built on what you want, and they offer a lot of different options. So we'll probably get something with 4 or 5 different prices from one company. Do you want this? Do you want this kind of recording? Do you want license plate recognition and data summaries? They offer a menu of services and things that you pay by the line item. So, but I'm sure I can come up with something for the next meeting. I'd love to. So,
All right, thank you.
Thanks,
Guilty.
Ron.
Okay, can we also say if there are any other items anyone would like to add into the budget, since this is our preliminary meeting about it, we can still bring it back next month, just like Ron would bring an aim for this. If there's anything else that somebody's been thinking about and didn't come up tonight, they can bring it for next month and we can discuss that when we're really finalizing our budget. Does that seem reasonable?
That sounds good. I will close out the budget conversation with this. So I have estimated, and this is in the treasurer's report too, but the numbers that I had us conservatively working with as our budget, not really counting on, not fully counting on the same amount of money that we got in TIF, just because I haven't connected with Rita on that. And so I didn't want to project something just yet on that, but I will give you that next month. I did it conservatively, where we're working about $1 million. And if you included what Ron proposed at 100,000, what I have us up to with all of the other projects is $400,070 for your budget for capital improvement projects for 2023.
Thank you.
I should say this is probably going to be a little bit over what our income will be for the year, but we do have funds in our exchequer that we haven't used in prior years, so we can cover that budget.
Well, that's what I've taken into consideration with the million. What gets into the million is the 580-ish thousand that we have in our TIF account that is sitting ready for us, and then that is the $250,000 in the sunflower, as well as I just put in about 200,000 for the TIF right now, and that's low. But I was also kind of going on what we've gotten. So anyways, I was keeping it low right now, and next month you'll see, you know, all the numbers in that. But I was just being conservative with the million and just trying to let you know that you stayed well within that, and that you'll have plenty of money still in the coffers for things.
Monorail.
Great, thank you. All right, we are at almost 9 o'clock. We don't normally run this late, but we still have a ton of items on our agenda. So do we want to take a 5-minute break? We took one almost 2 hours ago and then come back. Do we want to move some of this to August?
Barbara, I was just going to ask, and I'm leaving for a 2-week trip in the morning, and we haven't packed yet. And so I was going to ask, in any case, if we're going to do the wayfinding, if we could do it next rather than at the end of all the action items.
Or do you want to do wayfinding in August? I think is what Barb is asking either. So I guess it's
Yeah.
really up to wayfinding how they would like to move forward. Because we do need to do the
yes.
board elections.
Yeah, we have to do that tonight. And I
Right.
think we have to do the mural because there are people waiting
Yes.
for.
We want her to be able to get started.
So do you want to go forward with wayfinding, Steve, or do you want to wait until August? And we could wait until August if we had to on the certificate, but that's up to you guys. You brought those forward.
Right. Yeah, I guess with the plan, we were going to do a different aim, and then Barb, with your input, we changed the aim last minute, and part of it was going to be to get approval to move forward with an RFP that we would bring back in August.
Okay.
So I guess that would push that till September to put out an RFP for just working on phase 2. So I suppose, and then that would be, yeah, I mean, I suppose we could still do it, and we'd just be working through the winter if we engage a company besides merge. So I guess I'm okay to wait on the wayfinding. And I do need to drop off the meeting pretty soon, though, because I have 2 little kids that we got to get to bed, and we still have to pack and get out of here in the morning.
Okay. Is that okay with everybody else to wait for next month on the wayfinding? Let's just go step by step here.
My co-committee says okay, so that's good.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm okay with it. Is there anybody that's not okay with it? Okay. So we're going to table wayfinding for August, and we're going to put it at the top of the meeting.
Thank you.
It will be the first thing.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Claudia.
Sure.
So sorry, my voice is a little cracked right now. Do we want to take a 5-minute break or just keep plowing through? We've got the election and the mural. They have to be this month because we're waiting for direction on the mural. How do you guys feel?
I would like to suggest that we also move the CD, if Ron's okay with that, till August, because I do think that it's a part of your budget discussion. I think you need to see the final numbers and where you are to really decide, and your cash flow statement, to really decide if you want to do the CD. But we can discuss it tonight if you want, because I have all those numbers. I can give you all those numbers now. I put a lot of them in there because Steve Roundtree had asked for, estimates on what we're projected to bring in for the TIF and the property tax, and I've got that in there. And that, so we can definitely have that conversation. But I also just think it logically makes sense to be with your budget conversation too. So that's just my 2 cents. It's really up to you and Ron, you all as a board, and Ron.
Okay. I guess, is there anyone that is opposed to moving it to August? Ron, does that work for you?
Sure, I'd prefer to have more time to discuss it than less. And when we get this late in the evening,
Yeah.
that means less time and less attention paid to what I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Ron. So we'll move it and I'll have that on there.
Great, thank you. Do you want to hop into mural or elections next? They're probably
I'll do elections. I'll do elections real quick.
great.
And then Danielle can do the mural.
Thank you.
So as we discussed, every July we do annual board elections. And so last year you had amended your bylaws to include that, to have that include the treasurer. So tonight you will be electing a chair, vice chair, and treasurer. And the only person that responded that they were interested in the chair position was Barb. So I thought I would just open it up to everyone, you know, if the previous individuals holding the positions are all still interested, they would be your candidates. And then if there's any other people that are interested, you know, now's the time to speak up.
And if no one is interested in changing things up, Andrew, are you still interested in being vice chair?
Yeah, that's fine.
Does someone want to make a motion to move forward the same people? Or how does that work, Kate?
I don't know, Miranda, can we do it that way?
You have to do it one by one, or?
I was trying to unmute. No, I mean, if you wanted to do it kind of as a full slate like that, you could.
Okay.
I move that we reinstate the same chair, vice chair, moving forward for next term,
And treasurer.
and treasurer, yeah.
I second.
And Kate, would you take a roll?
Steve Carot
Yes.
dropped off. Okay, great. Barb Hart,
Yes?
Andrew Duarte,
Yes.
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Catherine Vallon,
Yes,
Scott Papich,
Muted.
I think I heard him for Scott
Yeah.
Papich.
Yes.
Okay, great. Now I see you. Thank you. Trustee Corvalin.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Great, thank you. Then Danielle, you are up on the murals design.
Yay. Are we able to share the image of the?
Miranda, do you mind pulling up that part of the packet for us, please?
So Julia Williams has been working on our Poe wall mural, and tonight she was here. I don't think she's here any longer. And what we need is for you guys to say yay or nay. And if you have any minor suggestions, if we do get approval that you would like us to bring to her for it. So we pay for a preliminary drawing, which is what you see tonight. And with a preliminary drawing, you get just a little bit of edit room, which is what I will bring back to her if you guys have any suggestions. Otherwise, we give her the go-ahead to create this image onto the wall. So tonight, I want to hear what you guys think of the design, if you have any suggestions for it, and if we can move forward with it.
And the way that it's shown here, it's kind of like shrunk down. It stretches across much farther. So it actually goes all the way across from what is between Good Life Pilates towards Busey Brews. Is that correct?
Yes, it's at least twice as wide as what is squished into this image. So the proportions are better. It does go underneath the stairs with that mountain background with stars, so that the whole concrete wall will be covered. Yeah, we I think her design is beautiful. The musicians are ones that have been here. I'm not a music person. The only one I'm really familiar with is Elton John. Her use of color, I think, is very catchy. Her proportions, although this is a little squished, are very nice. Her composition is very eye-catching too. I think these colors down there will be good. And I know that the Pose were interested in having those picnic tables painted also. So once this is approved, we can talk about finding an artist for them to work with to do that. And that's something I think that they will be paying for, not us, for sure. Questions and comments?
Who are the artists depicted?
So I know Elton John, she had written in an email, I'll see if I can pull it up, of who the other two are. I'm sorry, I didn't think to do that earlier.
It looks like maybe Stephen Stills and Joe Walsh.
Yeah, I was thinking Stephen Stills.
Are these artists that played in Nederland? I mean, Steven Stills had a house up here, so he played in Nederland. But is there a Nederland significance? Is my question.
Is it Caribou Ranch? Is that the
Caribou
connection?
Yes.
Okay,
That's what I thought.
thank you.
Cool.
I have to pull up the Ned Public Art email to get specifics on that. So that will take me a little bit longer, and I can do that while you guys go around the room.
One of them might be Dan Fogelberg.
In the middle? I can't tell. It's because they're stretched so weird right now, and it's just the computer. So it's really hard to tell. Does anyone have any other questions or comments while Danielle's looking for that email?
This is Steve Carot. I like the design and the color, and I don't really have any things that I would say that I'd like changed. I think it's really nice. I do love the background with the night sky and the stars and the mountains too.
Nice. Anyone else?
No, I'm just trying to picture the concrete wall tying into the dirt there. And just, I realize that down a lot of it will be snow and nothing really to change. I like the colors, and I think there might have to be some delineation between grade and the boulders, and just in all practicality when it goes down there. But no real comments.
Danielle, can you clarify which direction does this fall face?
South.
So you'll be able to see it from the community garden and part of the Busey Brews patio. You can see it from the picnic tables that are outside of Good Life Pilates down there.
Yeah, I know where it is.
If there was ever a river walk, you would be able to see it from the river walk. But from the other side of the street, you really can't because the trees are too thick. Like by the lodge. Does anyone want to make a motion? Are you? I wish Dan or Miranda, are you doing the screen? Is there any way to see it as it is? Zoom in on it or anything? Because it's
I clicked on the link. And
there it goes.
You can zoom in on it, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure it changes the way you see it, but
Yeah. It's in the packet. And
Yeah,
it looks good in the packet.
the link in the packet looks good.
Yeah.
I have it on my desktop. Am I able to share my screen? that, or I can just keep looking for that email, which I'm not super close to. I thought I saw it. I should probably just look for that email.
Yeah, I guess Danielle, just in learning what you have, and I got to get back to the aim there, but about surface preparation, is there anything that needs to be done for
So
surface prep?
yeah, thank you. The concrete wall has been power washed and the Pose paid for that. They already gave me a check and the check is covering the concrete sealant, which will also be available for after the painting too, but we'll need to do some research to make sure that they are compatible. So the wall's being prepped accordingly. And as soon as I put the sealant on it, then she can start with your permission.
Great, thank you. And you're just looking for approval, like by packet just closed. So was that what the motion to approve the location, or?
No, we already approved the location.
Okay.
What we're looking for tonight is that you like the design and that we can move forward with it.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Pulling it up on my other computer.
Yeah, I think maybe just if a lot of people might have the same questions that we do, like who are the artists? Obviously Elton John's identifiable, but maybe just some, whether it's a placard or, Caribou Ranch history written, that would be my only feedback. Is it might be nice to have something that identifies, like notable artists performed at Caribou Ranch and the names. That's all my feedback, but I approve it.
That's a good idea.
We
Is there
can
any-
do that in the plaque because we will be doing a plaque for each mural.
Is there any worry that we could get sued by any of the, obviously, families of the artists for like basically portraying them on a wall? Do we have to have permission for that?
No, I don't think so. The way that she does her style, it's not, it's altered enough from any photography that the style is completely different. And from what I understand with portraits like this, I've never heard of you needing to get permission from them. And we've been careful about copyright issues, and she's done portraits like this in her murals. I can run it by her to make sure. It's a good question, but I really don't think there's going to be any issues with it.
So that'd be like a $5,000 problem. Like if we're paying $5,000 for the mural and somebody came back and said you can't use that, that would be a big issue for me.
Yeah, I really don't think we'll have an issue with that, but I can look into it for you.
Oops.
I think Naomi would be a really good one to get legal background for that. That would give you what you would like to hear. I will ask her.
Okay. When was she talking about starting this?
As soon as you guys approve it and I get the coat on the concrete, so within a week.
Okay.
For some reason, I'm having trouble finding the email that has the list of the musicians. She was here earlier. I'm sorry that we missed her.
Hey, Danielle, how long does a project like this take once she starts working on it? We talking about 2 weeks work or a month of work?
We try to get started as soon as possible because of weather up here. I don't have a definite time frame for her, but what we have on our agenda is that she wraps it up by the end of August.
Go check before I go, but yeah, that's our last thing, I think.
So we have a timeline, and to meet that timeline, we would need approval this meeting to move forward with it. Otherwise, that sets us back a month and we run into what we ran into last year with Greg's mural, which wouldn't work out because this one is not going to be able to move indoors. And since
Right.
I'm not finding that email, can I share my screen and share the image that I have on my laptop so you guys can see it better? Is that okay?
I don't know, Miranda's in control of the screen or?
But anyone can share. You just have to click on the share button at the bottom.
Right. So I think no, that's applications. Is that coming up for you guys? It's a little blurry.
What are you trying to share? We have it on our images that we got from the agenda.
Okay, well, I was just trying to share the main picture of it. While I was looking through my emails, I didn't know that you guys found a better image of it. Okay.
I just have it on the, I'm just looking at it on the agenda.
Okay. Then I don't need to share that. Do you guys like it?
Yeah.
Is there, so you want me to check about copyright using famous people's image? Is there anything else I need to look into?
Confirmation on who they are.
Confirmation on who they are. And anything else? And do we go about getting confirmation on who they are and copyright issues and then having that be approved on time?
So we'd have to do a special meeting if the board isn't willing to vote on it tonight. We'll need to do a special meeting for it to move forward on that time frame.
I mean, I would really like to have that information. I just feel really uncomfortable about it. And I think that it's important that we have, you know, before we say yes, that we have that and for sure who they are. So I understand tying it into Caribou Ranch, but just more information about it overall, I guess, is what I'm looking for.
All right. And a side note is I'm not into music, and except for Elton John's glasses, I wouldn't be able to identify any of them, but I'm not a music person.
I just asked my husband, Doug recognizes Elton John. So, and he's been in music since he worked at Caribou Ranch in the 70s. And so that is a question to clarify exactly who we're looking at. Is it legal for us to use those? I would just like more clarification on it because it makes me really nervous saying yes to something without having all of the information that we need.
Okay. And then Kate, can we talk to you about getting a special meeting for this?
Yes, we'll talk about that tomorrow night.
Okie dokie. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle.
That wraps up our action items and brings us to informational items, which is all of our reports. Mine is in the packet. I don't have anything to add except for I really enjoyed the work session with all the other boards last night. I thought it was really productive and I hope we have more of those. And Ron, do you have anything on the treasurer's report?
Kate and I are going to work on this project together, and also I would like to kind of codify our financial statements. So hopefully next meeting, Kate and I will be able to present a little bit different type of balance sheet, more like in a business form. So that's one thing. The rest of the
We can
report,
talk about that, Ron.
okay. I didn't want to do that. We're in financially good shape, and we're planning pretty well conservatively to stay that way. So I'm very pleased with our financial position. Any questions on the accounts or anything else? Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Kate?
I don't have anything to add other than what's in the packet. Thank you all.
Great, thank you. And Miranda?
Same, nothing else to add, but what's in the packet.
Great, thank you. And Andrew, do you have a big spring? You included the overall draft schedule, which looks
So-
wonderful.
I am the one who included that
okay.
in there. That is where we are right now. We do need to get the contract executed by town, since town ultimately owns these improvements at the end, and that will happen at the board meeting next week. And after that document is given to the contractor, they can get going. But they have ordered everything, and they're trying to get mobilized so that we can get this done.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have a committee report? Or other business?
Well, I have, can I jump in here with the artists' names? This is
Yeah.
Daniel. All right, Elton John, Joe Walsh, and Steven Stills.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I mean, just on a simple Google search I was doing just now, I know we need more than just that, but it says you can sell an art painting of a celebrity as long as it's transformative, which means it needs to be artistic and not just a faithful likeness. And it cannot copy an existing work of art or a photo or interfere with the celebrity's right of publicity. So, according to that Google, it would be good, but I think we probably need some other verification.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Tanya. Does anyone else have any other business or want to put forward a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, third, fourth. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Good night,
everyone.
everyone.
Have a
Night.
good night.
Thank you.